Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has find clan ancestor's tomb. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Hakkyou no Yami and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Minato Namikaze stood on top of the greatest of the toad summons, Gamabunta. He looked into his arms to find a blonde-haired baby in a bundle, his son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He looked up and stared into the eyes of the most fearsome creature Konoha had ever faced, the Kyuubi no Yoko himself. Not more than a few hours ago, the Kyuubi had attacked their village, but the reasons for it were completely unknown. He sighed as he looked at the scroll in his other hand, the Shiki Fuin. I wish it didn't have to come to this. Minato rolled out the scroll and gently placed Naruto down. Gamabunta, I need you to hold Kyuubi off, just for a little while longer. Gamabunta nodded his head. You got it, Minato. Gamabunta performed a few hand seals, Suetun, Teppadama no Jutsu. Gamabunta's throat seemed to swell as a gurgling sound came from it. He then opened his mouth as a massive ball of water shot out of it and hit the Kyuubi no Yoko directly in the face. That probably didn't do any damage, but it might buy us some time. Gamabunta looked at the steam created from the cold water hitting the Kyuubi. A massive claw came out of the cloud and slashed Gamabunta across his left eye. Aggh. He grabbed the injury and felt the telltale drops of blood. Fuck, I can't last that much longer. He looked up at Minato. You had better be finished soon, you bastard. I can't hold this flea bag forever. Minato looked at Gamabunta. Almost done. He finished the last hand seal and yelled, Shiki Fuin. The area seemed to drop in temperature by a huge margin. Kyuubi seemed to stop in its tracks as a dark form took shape in front of it. The great demon's eyes widened as he saw the form of the figure. Shinigami-sama? Kyuubi stepped back as the Shinigami turned its attention towards Minato. You have signed the contract, you have summoned me, you are given one request. Be warned. The greater the request's difficulty, the greater the price you will have to pay for me to acknowledge it. What is your request? Minato bowed before the Shinigami. Shinigami-sama, as you can see, the Kyuubi no Yoko is attacking my village. I cannot hope to defeat it on my own. Please, I beg of you, seal the demon inside my son. I wish for the village to be safe, and my son is the only one capable of holding the demon, please. The Shinigami looked at Minato incredulously. Clearly this mortal did not read the fine print. He wants me to seal the Kyuubi inside his son. Is he a fool? I could just send the demon to the netherworld. The Shinigami sighed as he pulled out his knife. Oh well, it is not my job to give him these details, and he has already made his request. Minato stood as the Shinigami turned towards Kyuubi and jammed his knife inside of the Biju's head. Kyuubi screamed as he felt his soul being torn out of his body. As his soul was being torn from the body began to fall into ash and dust. The Shinigami held up the Kyuubi's soul and all of his power. Looking at Minato, he said, You have made your decision, and I will now take my price. The Shinigami shoved the Kyuubi inside Naruto and slashed across Minato with his blade. In an instant, a seal appeared on Naruto's navel. Minato fell to his knees as the Shinigami placed his dagger back in his mouth. He looked at Minato and spoke telepathically. Our debt is settled, our contract bound, until Kyuubi is set free. My price stands. Minato Namikaze. The Shinigami vanished in the air as Minato fell to his knees, panting as he felt intense pain travel through his body. I'm alive? Minato collapsed from exhaustion as Gamabunta began to leap towards Konoha and Minato's family. The next day, Kushina stared at her husband's prone form. It was the worst fate for a shinobi, to become crippled, especially when they were as young as Minato. She looked towards the crib next to Minato's bed and looked at the crib's inhabitants, her twin children, her firstborn son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and his twin sister, younger by a few minutes, Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze. The door opened as Hiruzen Sarutobi entered. He looked at Kushina and sighed. Kushina, I am so sorry. If I had known what Minato was going to attempt, I would have stopped him. Kushina shook her head. Even if you could stop him, there was no way you would have made it to the battle before Minato took your place. That's just how he is. Hiruzen sat down and looked at the two infants. So the two of them will soon be without a father. Minato looked at Hiruzen. I'm afraid so. Aji cough cough. Kushina dabbed a wet cloth on Minato's forehead. Minato-kun, you need your rest. We might be able to save you. Hiruzen sighed. I'm afraid that is unlikely. Tsunade is the only one who could possibly save him, and she left Konoha over a week ago. I'm afraid that we have no idea where she is. Kushina looked at the Sandaime. Surely there is anything we can do. Hiruzen sighed. I am sorry, Kushina, but there is nothing we can do. Kushina sat in the chair and began to sob as Minato reached out and stroked her cheek. Kushi-chan, please keep our children safe. Kushina continued to sob, not hearing what Minato had said. Damn it, there has to be something I can do. There has to be a wait. Kushina's eyes widened as she remembered something she had forgotten. There is a fountain in the temple ruins of Yuzugakure. The fountain is able to sustain the life force of whoever drinks from it for several days. If I can get Minato there we might be able to get enough time to find a permanent solution but… Minato and Hiruzen looked at Kushina, but what? Kushina sighed, it will take us a while to get to the temple and if we bring Naruto and Narumi, the journey will just take longer. By the time we get to the springs Minato might be too far gone. Kushina grabbed her forehead and groaned in absolute irritation, it's not fair. Minato looked down his entire life. He wanted to be a father, to raise his children as he has always wanted. He looked towards Hiruzen. Hiruzen the Sandame turned his attention towards Minato. Can you promise GRR and me, that my children will be safe? Hiruzen looked at Minato. What do you mean Minato? Minato managed to use a bit of his remaining strength, and push himself up. Hiruzen, if there is the slightest chance, that I could raise my children I will take it. I need this Hiruzen, please can you promise me that Naruto and Narumi promise me that they will be kept safe? Hiruzen looked at Minato, the man was pleading. Hiruzen sighed, very well I will protect them to the best of my abilities. Minato smiled. Thank you. Minato looked towards his wife. Kikuchi-chan, let's go. Kushina walked over to Minato but stopped as she walked over to the crib. Naruto and Narumi were gently cuddling up next to each other. Goodbye my babies. Gently giving each one a kiss she then went to Minato. Hiruzen, as soon as Minato is healed, we will be coming straight back. Kushina performed a single hand sign, use ascension. The two disappeared in a whirlpool of water. Hiruzen looked at the two infants. Well, better go tell the council about this. Council chambers. Hiruzen was staring in shock at the council. The council was absolutely split. The civilian side mainly wanted Naruto to be killed, the only exceptions were the Ichirakus and the Harunos, who offered to take Naruto in, but the Harunos were well known to do outrageous things to those they adopted. Once there was a case where a young male was taken in by the Harunos. He was 5 when he was adopted. And the Harunos spent several years brainwashing him to become the women's sex slave, which meant he was raped quite often as there was only a 10% chance a male would ever be born from a Haruno. The shinobi side was also split. Fugaku, Inoichi, Choza, and a few lesser clans were calling for the boy's death. The Nara, Aburame, Hyuga, and Inuzuka families were completely against it, while the Kurama and Senju clan were suggesting Naruto be imprisoned. Then there was the elders. His teammates were siding with the civilians, while Danzo was trying to get Naruto applied to his root division. Hiruzen had enough. Quiet. It is clear to me that we can never come to an impasse so long as this council is split. As such, I cannot allow any of you to make a decision for young Naruto. He and his sister shall be placed in the orphanage until they are old enough to receive an apartment, and from this day forward, none are to ever mention that Naruto contains the QB. Am I clear? The council grumbled as they left the council chambers. After a few minutes, Hiruzen Sarutobi was the only one left in the room. He quickly used Shunshin to get to his office where the two infants were sleeping. What am I going to do? If I tell them your heritage, then information might leak to Minato's enemies. And if they find out Minato is alive, and in such a weak condition, then Iwa's assassins will come like a locust swarm. Hiruzen looked at the two. He was left with an ultimatum: tell the populace the truth, and risk enemies lining at their doorsteps, or lie, and risk the two of them suffering. Hiruzen sighed as a single tear fell down his eye. I'm sorry. Time skipped 6 years. Narumi walked out of an alleyway, but stopped suddenly as she looked back. Aniki, come on, let's go. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy with whisker marks poked his head out. Emuto, you know how people treat you when I am around. What if they attack again? Narumi grabbed the boy's arm. I have a right to be seen with my big brother. Come on Naruto, let's go get some Ichirakus. Narumi dragged out her older brother, who was in pretty bad shape. His arms were covered in bandages and his clothes were torn and blood-stained. His body seemed malnourished. Not overly so, but enough that his bones were clearly visible. His eye sockets were partially sunken from dehydration, and his visible flesh, except for his face, had clear scars. Naruto sighed as he ripped his arm out of his Emuto's grasp. All right already, let's go. Narumi grinned as she grabbed her brother's hand and began to walk towards Ichirakus. On the way there, they both received glares, sneers, and hateful remarks. Most of them were directed at Naruto, some of them were directed to Narumi. Naruto snarled at the ones who directed their gaze at Narumi, causing them to quickly back off. For some reason, if he was even remotely aggressive, they would usually back off. But he was only aggressive if it involved his Emuto. The two siblings finally ended up in front of the Ichiraku's ramen stand. It was their favorite place to eat. Naruto may not be allowed in other restaurants, but whenever Narumi went in, she would always bring back some leftovers. Even still, the two found that Ichiraku's was the only place they genuinely enjoyed eating at. They walked inside and were immediately greeted by the person they both considered as a big sister, Naru-chan's. She practically jumped over the counter and swept up the both of them in her arms. Oh, I missed you too. She finally stopped spinning them and set them down, allowing them to recover from the whiplash. Hi and Nachan, how are you? Naruto asked as Narumi tried to keep herself standing. I am, cried fake anime tears. You haven't come in a while. I miss my favorite fish cakes. She continued crying anime tears. Naruto sighed. "Nei-chan, you know how the villagers don't like us or just me?" Ayam stopped crying and looked at Naruto with sad eyes. "If I came here too often, the villagers might try something. I don't want to risk that." Ayam leaned down and picked up the two and placed them on the benches. "Come on, you two are our best customers and you are just so adorable. Besides, Toussaint used to be a shinobi, and he has been teaching me a few things since he can't afford to send me to the academy. I think I can defend myself." She walked behind the counter. "So come by more often." "Oh." She turned towards the two blondes. "Me and Toussaint have a special treat for you too." She ran from behind the counter and closed the doors to the shop and put up the sign "Closed for today" before she ran back behind the counter. Naruto and Narumi watched as Ayam ran towards the back door and beckoned for someone to come in. Ayam turned towards the two of them and said, "Close your eyes." The two did so as they heard the shuffling of feet. "Okay, you can open them." The two blondes opened their eyes. "Surprise! Happy birthday!" Naruto and Narumi's eyes widened in front of them. Ayam, Tuchi, a few of the orphanage matrons, including the head matron, and the Hokage's secretary. They looked to see that each person had either a gift in their hands or a food item. Naruto and Narumi jumped up and ran to give all of them a hug as they adjusted the ramen stand to better accommodate the small party. Naruto and Narumi sat next to each other while Ayam brought out a big bowl. "This is our one-of-a-kind special." She placed it in front of the two, the twins' special. Naruto and Narumi looked at the bowl's contents and found all manner of the two's favorite toppings. The two immediately began to drool. They turned towards Ayam and shouted, "Thank you, Nei-chan, Aji-san." Ayam and Tuchi grinned. "Oh, it was nothing. Eat up, kids." Naruto and Narumi quickly complied as they dug into the noodles. The matron owner frowned as she looked at them. "Naruto, Narumi, what have I told you about eating like that?" Naruto looked at the matron owner and shrugged. "Ta not druith, to not do it." Naruto saw the disapproving look on her face and noticed that he still had noodles dangling from his mouth. Sorry. Naruto slurped up the noodles in his mouth as he turned back towards the bowl. Narumi was also slurping up noodles at the same time as she looked up. The two found their lips connecting, slurping up the same noodle. Click, click, click. Naruto and Narumi were so shocked by the sudden contact between their lips that they did not notice the cameras, the flashes, or the giggling of the matron workers. Naruto and Narumi stayed like that for a moment, and their faces lit up like a fire in the middle of a cave. The two quickly separated and looked away, part of the noodle still hanging out of their mouths. They quickly slurped up the noodles, still blushing. Ayam giggled as she got in between the two. "You two look so sweet." After they finally managed to get Ayam to stop giggling, they passed around the photos. Naruto and Narumi decided to keep one copy. Finally, after everyone had eaten, they began to pass around the presents. The matrons gave Naruto and Narumi new sets of clothing. Tuchi gave Naruto a special knife, while Ayam gave Narumi a matching one. The head matron gave Naruto and Narumi a little booklet with every picture she had ever taken of them. And the Hokage's secretary gave the two of them a check so they could go to more places to eat. Naruto turned towards Narumi. Emuto, his baby sister, looked at him. "I have one last gift for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a rectangular black box. Narumi watched as Naruto opened it, and her eyes widened at what was inside. Inside the box was a necklace with a golden chain, and a pink crystal, wrapped with a golden bow-like object. The way the bow was tied made the pendant look like an angel. Narumi gasped as she gently took the necklace. "Aniki, how did you?" Naruto grinned. "Afford it?" He chuckled as he sat back. Finding a bit of loose change, doing work for people." He gave her a gentle smile. "I wanted to get you the best. There isn't another necklace like that anywhere else." Narumi sniffled as she wiped a lone tear from her eye, and then quickly wrapped Naruto up in a hug. She smiled as she reached into her pocket. "I got these for you, Aniki." Naruto looked at the two small cases Narumi pulled out of her pocket. He gently took them both and opened them. Inside were two silver rings. One had a rose design on the front, and the other had the design of a sword wrapped in a cloth. Naruto gently took the rings and sniffled. "Thank you, Emuto." He wrapped his baby sister in a hug, causing her to gain a massive blush. Everyone giggled at the pair. The two of them were so close they may as well have been lovers. If they weren't siblings, they probably would be. The rest of the night, they enjoyed exchanging stories and eating until the matron workers finally had to leave. The head matron owner passed Naruto and Narumi a key to the back gate. That way the two of them could get in without being hassled by the idiot guards. The Hokage had insisted on being placed to keep the Haruno family away from the place. The Harunos had tried on multiple occasions to adopt Naruto and Narumi, but people knew what would happen if that occurred. One sex slave Naruto, and a slutty Narumi. The two waved goodbye to Tuchi and Ayam as they headed back to the orphanage. Unbeknownst to the two orphans, they were being watched by a white-haired man with a dog mask, a dark brown-haired woman with rectangular birthmarks on her cheeks, and a small group of villagers. "Tonight you die, demon." As the two were walking towards the orphanage, they exchanged glances with each other, blushing as they continued walking. The two were only a couple blocks away from the orphanage when Naruto suddenly stopped. He looked around and noticed shadows moving around quickly from place to place. "Oh, Kami-sama, no!" He grabbed Narumi's hand and ran down an alley. Narumi was surprised by Naruto's sudden contact, as well as him running down an alley, practically dragging her with him. "Aniki, what's wrong?" Naruto didn't bother to look back at her. "We are being followed." Narumi's eyes widened as she picked up the pace. The only time they were ever followed was when one of the shinobi wanted to hurt him. She didn't want that to happen again. The two weaved in and out of the cracks and holes through the alleys, throwing their pursuers off. The white-haired ANBU snarled as he lost their trail. "Damn, that demon is crafty, Rin." The dark brown-haired woman looked towards the white-haired man. "Yes, Kakashi?" The now-named Kakashi looked at Rin. "Use it now." Rin nodded her head as she went through hand seals. She turned her hand over, and green chakra began to take the shape of a radar beacon. A single blip appeared on the radar, making her grin. "The demon is over there." She pointed in the direction of the orphanage. Kakashi grinned underneath his mask. "Perfect, soon we will avenge you, sensei." He leapt in the direction Rin had indicated, with the rest of the mob following close behind. Naruto felt the chakra signatures moving closer and began to mentally panic. "No, if they find us, they will hurt Imoto-chan." He looked at Narumi, who was beginning to tire out. "I can't let her get hurt, but how?" The two turned a corner and Naruto saw an opening in the wall with grates next to it. "I'm sorry, Narumi." Before Narumi could react, she was pushed into a hole in the wall. She slid down several feet and ended up in a waterway. She was about to crawl up the hole. "Stay down there, Narumi, I am not taking no for an answer." He covered the hole in the wall and yelled, "Don't cry out, don't scream, don't plead, just stay silent." Naruto looked up and found the mob right in front of him. "Well, look at what we have here. The demon is all by himself." "Any last words, demon?" Naruto got into a fighting stance. "Go to hell." He ran at the closest civilian and punched him in the stomach, while he kicked the man in the shin. The man dropped the pipe he was going to beat Naruto with and grabbed his leg. Naruto grabbed the pipe and swung it at the man's face, crack, and broke his nose, and most likely part of his skull. Naruto swung it at another civilian, managing to sweep him off his feet before he smashed the pipe into his chest. He was about to swing it at another person, Chikura no Mezu, but dropped it as he felt an incredible amount of pain in his arm before it went completely limp. Rin chuckled as she held up her arm. "You may be in possession of that boy's body, Kyubi, but it still has the boy's weaknesses." She turned towards Kakashi. "Finish him." Kakashi nodded his head as he went through a few hand seals. Lightning began to travel towards his palm into a ball of lightning. He screamed as he ran at the blonde Raikiri and shoved the ball of lightning towards Naruto. Naruto managed to get out of the way, but his side was struck with the lightning blade, forcing him to tumble and roll. His body landed face first over the grate. Narumi was about to call out when she saw the condition of her Aniki, but the look he gave her silence swallowed as she reached up to Naruto. Naruto in turn began to turn his cheek, but he snapped up as blood shot out of his mouth. Kakashi had rammed a second Raikiri through Naruto's back, chuckling darkly, "Goodbye, demon." He tore his arm out of Naruto's body and shook the blood off of him. "Ugh, now I need to throw out these gloves. Filthy demon." Narumi whimpered as she tried to keep herself quiet, reaching up to the quivering Naruto. Narumi managed to reach up far enough as she stroked his face. Aniki. Naruto looked at her and let out a single breath as the light went out in his eyes. Narumi fell backwards as she saw those eyes, the dead look in them. She was so shocked and traumatized, she did not see Naruto's attackers lift up the blonde's body as they began to talk. "We need to get rid of the body. If any of the demon lovers find him, they will report this to the Hokage." Kakashi spoke up. "I know the perfect place to take him." Kakashi roughly grabbed the blonde by the ear. "And what a perfect place it is, demon." Kakashi disappeared via Shunshin as the rest of the mob scattered. Narumi sat in the waterway looking as the blood dripped down the grates into the water. "Aniki," she said it so quietly it was barely a whisper. "Aniki," she said it loud enough to consider it a whisper. "Aniki," she began to speak loud enough for people outside the grate to hear as she began to cry. She stood up and shouted as tears flowed down her face quicker than before. "Aniki." She shouted so loudly it echoed down the tunnel, repeating over and over as the young blonde girl fell to her knees and sobbed. 10 minutes later with Kakashi. The dog-masked Anbu suddenly appeared in front of a large canyon with a river flowing through it. He looked to his right to see two statues, and snorted, "How fitting that the demon should disappear where it was first found." He yanked up Naruto's body and snarled, "Say hello to the devil for me, demon." He threw Naruto's body into the river, and watched it splash in as the blood began to flow out. With a single snort of disgust, he turned away. "At last you are avenged, Minato-sensei." In an instant he vanished, leaving the blonde's corpse to float down the river. Naruto's mindscape. It was so dark, so cold he could feel the water rushing past his body as he lay there. Was he dead? Was this hell? What happened? Naruto sat up and looked around. He was in a sewer, if the pipes and cracked walls were anything to go by. Standing up, he looked around. Hello? Is anyone there? Naruto began to walk down the hall. Where am I? Naruto snapped his head around as he heard a deep, dark chuckling. This way the dark voice was terrifying. Naruto felt like he should leave, but he felt compelled to follow the direction of the voice. Naruto walked down the hall towards the voice. No, not that way. Naruto stopped and turned a different direction. He did not know why, but he just couldn't deny the voice's will. Finally, Naruto stopped as he stood in front of an iron door. Open it. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat as he reached out towards the door handle. He grasped it before he turned it, and pulled the iron door open. Good, now go inside. Naruto seemed to be in a trance as he walked inside. As he walked inside, he saw a massive cage with iron bars, being closed shut by a single piece of paper with the kanji 4 seal written on it. Naruto walked up to the cage. Welcome. Naruto jumped back as a pair of crimson eyes opened as a giant row of razor-sharp teeth revealed itself. Warden. That's it for now, ladies and gentlemen, and also boy and girls, though the little ones shouldn't be here. Just a little warning, as things later on may get a little too messy. Grins darkly. Yeah, a little too messy. Please wait for the next chapter. Until then, laters or Johnny. Also, those who are waiting for my story, The Rise of the Golden Sun, please accept my sincerest apologies that I have such a long time to update. I have hit the bane that is all of us, the right, and fanfiction, the curse that is known as writer block, so the story would be in an indefinite hiatus, and thank you for understanding. So please leave your comment in your reviews. Oh yeah, and any flommers out there, do your business correctly or scram the hell off, or go bother someone else like those yaoi infestations. So until the next chap, everyone, me and my partner bid you until the next time. Yeah, until next time. Naruto stared at the pair of crimson eyes before him. Who are you? Where am I? What the hell is going on? The creature seemed to get a thoughtful look. In order, I am the Kyuubi no Yoko. This is your mindscape, and currently you are here to draw upon my power so that you can survive after being thrown off a cliff into the Valley of the End. Does that answer your questions? Naruto stared at the Kyuubi. Kyuubi, but how the Yandame killed you, Aji-san told me. The Kyuubi sighed as a sad expression came across his face. Child, you have been lied to by the Sandame. The Yandame could not kill me. In fact, no mortal could ever kill me. They might be able to kill a lesser Yuki, but they could never kill me. The only thing they would be able to do is seal me, but unlike my lower-ranking brethren, I cannot be sealed in an inanimate object, an animal, or an adult. I had to be sealed in a fresh newborn you. Naruto fell to his knees. Why you are sealed inside me? The Kyuubi nodded his head. He looked down. So the villagers were right, I am a demon. Kyuubi smashed his claws into the bars, scaring Naruto. And oh, you are not a demon, you are not me. Do not let their words poison your mind, child. It is not your fault that I attacked, nor do you deserve all that has happened to you. Naruto stared at Kyuubi. How do you know what has happened to me? Kyuubi sighed as he laid down. You might want to get comfortable, this is going to be a long story. Naruto nodded his head and sat on the floor as he looked at the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi sighed as he began his tale. First off, Kyuubi is just my title, well, one of my titles. My actual name is Yasui Tensai, the other Bijou are my longtime comrades. Naruto nodded his head, but he seemed a bit uncomfortable. Yasui chuckled as he looked at Naruto. Perhaps I should take on my human form, would that make this conversation a bit more comfortable for you? Naruto nodded his head. Very well. The entire mindscape was flooded with a bright light as Naruto was blown back by a great wind. Once the light dimmed, a figure walked up to the bars of the cage. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at the figure in front of him. It was a tall man with long red hair tied back in a long ponytail. He had fair pale skin and deep whisker marks on his face. His eyes were red, and his nails were onyx black. He wore a kimono that had fox designs all across it. Yasui grinned as he sat down. There, much better now. Where was I? Oh right, he snapped his fingers. As I said before, Kyuubi is but one of many titles I have. I am also known as the Natural Disaster, the Fox Warrior, and my personal favorite, the Naidame Rinsaikage of the Hidden Village of the Ancients. Naruto stared at Yasui. Our Rinsaikage, Nature Shadow? Yasui nodded his head. Yes, I was sworn in as the Rinsaikage about 700 years after the death of our Shodame Rinsaikage, and I ruled for over 250 years. That is, he looked down. That is, before Madara Uchiha used his eternal Manjikyu and warped my mind, and forced me to attack your village. Naruto leaned in closer. But how do you know what has happened to me in life? Yasui stood up and leaned against the cage wall. I have been able to see your entire life from the moment I was sealed inside of you, even if you yourself did not see what was going on around you. I saw as you were beaten, I saw as you strove to be the best, I saw as you were left by your own mother and father. Naruto looked at Kyuubi. My mother and father abandoned us? Kyuubi nodded his head. Yes, I am sorry, Naruto. Naruto looked down as Kyuubi continued. Your father was the Yandame Hokage, and was responsible for sealing me inside of you. Your father used the power of the Shikifuen seal, a contract of the Shinigami, but he did not read the fine print. He could have easily had the Shinigami send me to hell, or some other plane of existence, but because he did not read the full contract, I was sealed inside of you instead. The Shinigami also did not take his soul like he had thought. I am not sure of what the Shinigami did, but I think he destroyed your father's ability to produce life-giving chakra. He had enough left in his system to last him but 3 days, but your mother wanted him to live, and took him to the springs of Yuzugakure, where he would be able to heal and grow strong enough to survive, leaving the two of you here. Naruto processed everything he had heard. His mother and his father had abandoned both him and Narumi, without even bothering to check up on them? What parent could do that to their own children? Yasui reached his hand through the bars and placed it on Naruto's head. Naruto, I know it hurts, but you need to. Yasui stopped as he was suddenly thrown back by a massive killing intent. He stared at Naruto as an aura of anger rolled off of Naruto like a tsunami over a flat surface. I have never felt such killing intent from a human. How is this possible? Naruto lifted his head up and snarled, they abandoned us, they left us to die, not even bothering to check up on us, not once. Damn them both to hell. The waters in the mindscape began to thrash as Naruto grew angrier and angrier. Yasui grabbed Naruto's shoulders and shouted, damn it Naruto, calm down, what would your sister think of you after seeing this? Naruto suddenly stopped at the mention of his sister, his precious Imuto. How would she react to him throwing a tantrum like this? Naruto sighed as he took deep calming breaths as Yasui explained to him, Naruto, I need to heal you, that Raikiri tore a hole straight your body and unless I heal it, you will die. After that is done we can head back to Konoha and tell the Sandaime what happened. No, Yasui looked at Naruto in shock, I won't go back to Konoha. Yasui was shocked, Naruto, but what about your sister? Naruto looked down, a pained expression in his eyes. So long as I am near her, they will continue to hate her. As long as I am not near her, she is safe. Yasui looked at Naruto, are you certain? Is this what you want, to leave your sister alone, believing her Aniki is dead? Naruto snapped his head at Yasui and shouted. Of course I don't. What brother would ever want to leave their little sister, especially when he was all she had? Do you think I want to leave her alone in this world, thinking I am dead? I hate the idea of leaving her, but I need to get stronger, or else I will never be able to protect her. And right now the only place I can do that is with you. Yasui sighed, very well Naruto, but where shall we go? Naruto looked at Yasui, to your home village Rinsaikage-sama. The mindscape faded away as Yasui nodded his head, very well Naruto. Outside of mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself laying on a sandbar. It must have been low tide or something. Pushing the sand from his eyes, he got up on his feet. His wound had completely sealed up, and the only trace it was there was a spiral scar. Naruto sighed as he looked around, alright, time to move. He stood up but turned as he sent one last look in the direction of Konoha. He sighed and opened the ring case that his Imuto had given him and slipped on the 2 rings. He looked at them and clenched his fist. I swear Narumi, my precious Imuto, once I am strong enough to defend you, like an Aniki should, I will return. He shot across the river, whispering to himself, and I will not leave you again. Back in Konoha. Narumi was curled in a ball, still in the sewer where Naruto had told her to stay, crying her eyes out. She had watched her Aniki get killed and wasn't able to do anything about it. I'm weak, I couldn't even save him. What kind of sibling can't save their own family? She sobbed to herself as she clutched herself tighter and suddenly felt a prick against her fingers. She reached to where the object pierced her and found the necklace Naruto had given her. She looked at it, the last piece she would ever have of her brother. It was the only thing she had left. Narumi screamed in anguish as she began to punch the ground. Why, Aniki, why did you have to leave me like this? Why? Narumi sobbed as she let punch the ground until her knuckles bled. 20 minutes later, 2 women were walking down the alleyway talking. One had long curly black hair and red eyes, and was wearing clothes that looked like they had been made out of bandages, but was also wearing a chunin vest. The other had medium-length purple hair tied in a topknot that spiked up like a pineapple. She also had an exceptional bust and was wearing clothes that accentuated her figure. The purple-haired woman chuckled, oh come on Kurenai-chan, why don't you just ask him out? Asuma is a great guy. The woman now named Kurenai sighed, I know Anko, but he is the Hokage's son. Do you know how it will look if I, the ice mistress, start coming onto him? That will just scream suspicious. Anko rolled her eyes. What is so suspicious of a beautiful woman going for a guy? Honestly Kurenai, you really need to. Anko stopped as she heard whimpering. Kurenai, stop. The red-eyed woman stopped as Anko started looking around the alley. Anko, what are you? She stopped as she also heard the whimpering. Kurenai quickly began to look around the alleyway as she tried to find where the whimpering was. Anko looked between a sewer grate, and her eyes widened. Holy shit Kurenai, get your ass over here. Kurenai bolted over and looked inside the grate. Inside, Narumi was whimpering as she clutched her bleeding knuckles, which looked to be infected. Shit, Anko, we have to get her out of there now. Anko sliced open her palm and performed hand seals, Kuchios no Jutsu. She slammed her palm into the ground, and a large cloud of smoke covered the area. A black snake, at least 12 feet long, hissed as it turned its head towards Anko. What do you need me for, Anko-sama? Anko pointed at the grate. Rip that grate open now, and I will feed you later. The snake nodded. Very well, shhhh. It sunk its fangs into the grate, and tore it open before it poofed away. Kurenai reached down and grabbed Narumi and gasped, "Oh my god, those wounds look bad. We have to get her to the hospital, fast." Anko stopped her. "Wait, doesn't she look familiar?" Kurenai followed Anko's gaze and noticed that she had in fact seen Narumi before. She was the QB container's sister. "You're right, but we don't have time to ponder that. If we don't get her to a hospital fast, she is going to lose those fingers, maybe even her whole hand." The two jumped onto the rooftops. Narumi began to sob as she clutched her necklace tighter. Aniki. 3.5 weeks later with Naruto and trudged through the wilderness as they panted from exhaustion. Apparently, the hidden village of the ancients was beyond the borders of the elemental nations, and was extremely difficult to get to. Naruto pushed back a branch and panted as he spoke to Yasui. "Damn Yasui, how much longer until we get there?" Yasui sighed. "I am not sure, Naruto. I have been sealed within you for the last 7 years or so. I can't exactly remember something as easily after that long of a period of time. I am a lot older than I look, you know." Naruto shouted, "What, you mean to tell me that for all we know, we could be lost? Are you fucking kidding me? I have been walking in this damn forest for the past 3 days, and you don't even know where we are?" Yasui glowered at Naruto. "Okay, first off, lower your voice. Second, I never said for all we know, we could be lost. I said I am not sure, so shut up." Naruto snarled at Yasui, unaware that he was talking out loud. "Now listen here, you damn fox. I am really getting sick and tired of having to deal with your incapable sense of direction. You said that you knew the way to this hidden village of the ancients, and thus far I have not seen a single thing to prove that." Naruto was about to continue his rant when he suddenly felt the air around him change. He snapped his head around, and found himself surrounded on all sides by many large armored warriors. Naruto looked at them and cursed, "Ah shit." Later, Naruto was being dragged in chains up to a massive tree. The tree was so tall, it would make the Hokage Tower look like an average home. It cast a giant shadow over the entire forest. The leader of the troop turned around and spoke with a foreign tongue to the troops. He then nodded as he opened the doors while they shoved him inside. Naruto stared in awe at the structure before them. The entire tree was built to accommodate a massive population, and there were also tunnels that seemed to lead downwards. They presumed that they were the tree's roots. The entire ground floor was filled with merchant shops with tents overhanging the shops, but what Naruto found weird is that people with odd features were also there. There were people with ears on top of their heads, long bushy tails, hell, there was even one who looked like his skin was made out of iron. Naruto was being dragged to a gate that had a carving of a 9-tailed fox on the front, a fox with 9 tails. Naruto began to speak to Yasui. "Yasui, are we?" Yasui grinned as he spoke through Naruto's mind. "Yes, Naruto, we are here. Welcome to the hidden village of the ancients." The doors with the 9-tailed fox on it opened and revealed a sight that shocked Naruto more than ever before. It was a massive city, filled with fields where all assortments of creatures fought. There were foxes with multiple tails, wolves, serpents, even spider women. The menagerie of creatures was endless. Naruto was not able to marvel at the sight before them, as he was dragged down the massive stairwell that had a large plateau meeting it at the bottom. The plateau had about 20 paths, each one leading to several different buildings, but the path in the middle led to a large tower that was at least 3 times the height of the Hokage Tower in Konoha. The leader of the patrol spoke in an unfamiliar tongue as they dragged Naruto towards a path that had a fox symbol on a sign overhanging the path. As they walked down, they passed by training fields where foxes the size of bulls attacked each other, and people with fox parts would throw balls of green fire at each other. There were whispers coming from those who noticed them. "Hey look, they are bringing him to the compound. I wonder what happened. Could he be an enemy spy?" The whispers continued, while Naruto tried to figure out what was going on. "Yasui, what the hell, where are they taking us?" Yasui grinned. "I will let you find out for yourself." Naruto was about to curse Yasui out when he was suddenly dragged forward as they came up to a large building. It was an oriental-style temple-like structure, and had several fox statues outside of the entranceway. Naruto was dragged up the stairs as the guards talked to each other in their language. The doors opened and a figure walked out. Naruto could not help but stare. The figure was a blonde woman with 9 fox tails behind her, and 2 blonde fox ears on top of her head. She had a beautiful hourglass figure and a gentle smile on her face. She looked at Naruto, and she turned to the guards and spoke in her own language, making it difficult for them to understand her. The guards replied in the same tongue. She seemed to have gotten a bit angry if the look on her face was anything to go by. The guards began to sweat as they tried to reply, only for the woman to point at the locks and state something very sternly, making the guards tremble as one of them quickly undid the locks before they ran off. The woman sighed and turned towards Naruto. "Sorry about that, the guards nowadays are a bit overzealous in their duties." Naruto's eyes widened. "Why, you can speak our language?" The woman nodded. Of course I can, it's just that most of us prefer the established language. Oh, I'm sorry, I have not yet introduced myself. My name is Tamamo Tensai, head of the Kitsune and Yoko clans. Naruto was about to reply when he heard Yasui shout in his head, my little Tamamo-chan. Yasui yelled so loudly that Naruto nearly passed out from the loud noise. Tamamo ran over to Naruto. Are you alright, little one? Naruto looked up. I will tell you in a minute, but can we go inside, please? Tamamo nodded her head and beckoned him to follow her inside. Later. After Naruto had explained to Tamamo everything that had occurred up to this point, she was about to faint, but as soon as she found out Yasui was sealed inside of him, she shouted, How the hell did my father get sealed inside of you? Naruto stared at Tamamo. Wait, you mean that annoying furball is your Two-san? Tamamo nodded. Yes, I can't believe it, my father is alive, the Nidaime Rinsaikage has returned, I have to go tell the Sandaime quickly. She was about to run out the door. Wait, Sandaime? There is a new Rinsaikage? Tamamo looked at Naruto. Well yes, my father has been missing for the last 700 years, and our village would have fallen apart had we not gained sufficient leadership. Come on, I am sure the Rinsaikage will want to hear of this. She grabbed Naruto by the wrist and ran out the door and headed down the path, leaving a cloud of dust behind her. Once they reached the plateau, Naruto had swirls in his eyes as she suddenly shot up the path towards the large tower. The guards at the tower saw her coming and immediately began to panic as they shouted in their native tongue, only for Tamamo to run past them and into the doorway, sending it flying off the hinges. Inside the tower, several people had to duck for cover as the doors blasted off the hinges and slammed into the wall, becoming nothing more than splinters. One of the individuals, a pale-skinned male with slitted gold eyes and a handsome face, with hair that had 3 curved spikes to one side, stood up and walked over to the doorway. The cloud surrounding the doorway dissipated as Tamamo was standing there, panting like crazy as she held up Naruto, who had swirls in his eyes and looked a bit green. The man sighed. Tamamo, I understand that being the daughter of the Nidaime Rinsaikage grants you some privileges, but I don't think one of those privileges is blasting open a doorway. It is difficult to replace the wood here to its finest quality, so please, can you just open it like normal people? Tamamo panted and spoke. Yeah, sure, whatever. Look, she held up Naruto. This boy, as hard as it may be to believe, has Nidaime-sama sealed in his body. Everyone stared at Tamamo, but none more so than the man in front of her. Tamamo, are you serious? She dropped Naruto and lifted up his shirt, revealing the seal on his navel. This caused the man to stumble a bit as he examined the seal. Whilst he traced his fingers across the designs, the seal, there are traces of Yasui-sama's energy here. He looked up at Naruto, who was shaking his head off from the sudden speed. But how did Yasui-sama come to be sealed in this boy? Naruto shook his head off. Oh hey lady, do you mind going a tad bit slower next time? I swear I got whiplash. The man stood up. I would like to hear of how it is you came to be the container of Yasui-sama. Please stay for dinner tonight, so that we may discuss this matter. Tamamo giggled as she hugged Naruto to her chest, with her breasts poking at his back. Why I haven't eaten in this place for ages. The man sighed. That's because you said unless your father was here you would sooner eat in your own clan house. Tamamo pouted. I miss my Two-san, but now she lifted Naruto up and hugged his stomach, making his spine crack. I have my Two-san right here. Naruto wheezed as he struggled. Ow, the pain. That night, Naruto sat next to the happy Tamamo, despite his protestations. He kept trying to edge away from her, but she would constantly pull him back next to her. The man from before coughed lightly and turned towards Naruto. First off, our introductions. My name is Yamato no Orochi. I am the Sandaime Rinsaikage of the hidden village of the ancients, and acting head of the Hibi clan. We apologize for our guards' rudeness as they brought you in, but we have had some bad dealings with a rival village. If you live here long enough you might be told more, but for now, we apologize. Naruto nodded. No problem, I have had worse greetings. Yamato nodded. Very well, now, we have come to understand that our Nidaime Rinsaikage has been sealed inside of you. How this is possible, we are not sure, as Yasui-sama is a being of great power. Not even the Shinigami should have been able to seal him. We would have to ask Yasui-sama himself, but to do that, we will have to destroy the seal keeping him inside you. As a human, you would die from it, but we have developed a process where this would not be the case. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What would I have to do? Yamato spoke. You would have to become a demon. Naruto stared at Yamato no Orochi, trying to process what he had just heard. He cleaned out his ear and asked, I'm sorry, but I am not sure I heard you right. Did you just say I had to become a demon? Yamato no Orochi picked up a cup of tea and nodded. Yes, that is what I said. Is there an issue with that? Naruto stood up and shouted, yes, there is a problem with it. How the hell am I supposed to become a demon? Tamamo looked at Naruto. Please calm down and let Yamachan explain. Yamato no Orochi hissed in annoyance. How many times have I told you to stop calling me that? Tamamo grinned. As many times as I have done it. Yamato no Orochi groaned as he massaged his forehead, then looked at Naruto. As I was saying, you would have to become a demon to survive having Nidaime-sama removed from you. The process by which involves a ritual created by the Shodaime Rinseikage. The ritual will force your body to become the demon that most represents your soul. Once you have become a demon, the seal will shatter, as the Shiki Fuin seal used to hold Nidaime-sama and does not allow one to seal a demon inside of another. Naruto swallowed hard as he looked at Yamato no Orochi. Isn't there another way you know, one that doesn't make me become a demon? One of the counselors, a woman with deep whisker marks and long black hair with pointed ears, looked at Naruto. Why would you pass up the opportunity to become a demon, especially when it removes you of your human weaknesses? Naruto looked at the woman with a blank face. Here is a list. I was beaten on a regular basis. I was unable to walk with my own sister, fearing for her safety as she was near me, and all that was because I have your leader sealed inside of me, and they thought I was a demon, so yeah, my opinion of demons isn't all that great really. Everyone was shocked that Naruto spoke of his life so nonchalantly and felt a little guilty. The woman nervously tried to speak. Jigomen Nasai. Naruto waved it off. Don't worry about it, it wasn't your fault. Now, as I was asking, is there any way I can get your leader out without becoming a demon? Yamato no Orochi shook his head. Unfortunately, no. Naruto slumped back in his chair. Damn, so it's either I become a demon, allowing Yasui to get out of me, or live the rest of my life a Jinchuriki. Naruto sighed and looked up at the group in front of him. I guess I have no choice. In Konoha, Anko and Kurenai stood outside the hospital room of Narumi. Ever since they dropped her off 3 weeks ago, they have been taking regular visits day in and day out. Sometimes they would leave work early to check up on her. The two could still remember barging into the hospital with Narumi. Flashback. Kurenai and Anko crashed through the hospital doors, sending shards of glass and doorframe everywhere across the lobby. Not even bothering to check if anyone else was injured, they ran to the front desk, where a female receptionist was awaiting them. She looked up to see Anko and Kurenai skid to a halt in front of the desk. This girl needs medical assistance now. The receptionist took a look at Narumi and scowled. That's the demon brat's sister. Why should I help a demon lover? The woman was grabbed by her throat and hoisted into the air by a very pissed off Kurenai. Now you listen here, get this girl some medical attention, and don't be skimpy about it, or so help me Kami I will bleed you out, leaving just enough to keep you alive, skin you, and then wrap you up in a sack made from said skin, got it? The woman nodded her head as she called for some doctors to assist in aiding Narumi. Anko looked at Kurenai nervously. I no longer feel safe around you, do know that, right? Kurenai rolled her eyes as she sat down on the bench, with Anko following suit but keeping a few feet between her and Kurenai. The two waited 3 hours before one of the doctors came out, scratching his head as he looked at the clipboard. He turned towards Anko and Kurenai. Excuse me, are you the ones that brought the blonde girl in? Anko shot up and walked over to him. So doc, come on, tell us, is she going to be okay? The doctor sighed and scratched his head. Well, perhaps I should explain it on the way. He beckoned them to follow him. Well, we managed to heal her wounds, but there was something odd going on with her. It was as if the wounds were trying to repel our healing chakra. The infection was also being neutralized by the cells, much quicker than thought possible. One of our medics examined her and well, I don't know what to say. Kurenai looked at the doctor. What do you mean? The man sighed as he flipped over the papers. Her body is healing 3 times faster than normal, and it seems that there have been slight changes in her chakra. It was likely from being around her brother so much. The demon's chakra must have leaked from the seal's confines. He stopped in front of a door. Beyond that, she seems physically healthy. But for some reason he looked down and sighed. Kurenai looked at the man. But for some reason what? The man looked at Kurenai and grasped the door handle. It would be best if you looked. He opened the door and stepped aside so that Kurenai and Anko could enter. Lying on the bed, Narumi was hooked up to several heart machines, and tears were flowing down her face as she was sobbing in her sleep. She was clutching a necklace around her neck as tightly as she could, and she was muttering something in her sleep. The two looked at the doctor, hoping he could explain. He sighed and flipped the charts. Apparently, she suffered some sort of trauma, and she went into a coma because of it. We are not sure as to what the trauma was. If we were allowed to employ the services of the Yamanaka family, we might be able to find out. But beyond that, we cannot do anything. All we can do is pray that she wakes up. The doctor did a quick bow before he left the two women with Narumi. End flashback. Anko shook her head and looked back at Kurenai. Man, I can't imagine how her brother must wait. She shot her head up. Why hasn't her brother shown up? Kurenai raised an eyebrow. Now that you mention it, I haven't seen Naruto either. It isn't like him to leave his sister, unless Kurenai's eyes widened, as did Anko's. You don't think that Naruto might have? Anko shook her head. No, he wouldn't die, not while his sister is alive. Anko stopped as she heard a moan of pain at her side. The two kunoichi turned towards the direction they heard the moan to see Narumi opening her eyes. She sat up and blinked a few times. With squinted eyes she looked around. Aniki, her eyes completely shot open as she shouted, "Aniki!" She looked where she was and tore off the covers, then grabs the 4 needles in her arms and tore them out. Anko and Kurenai stopped her and forced her to lie down. "Narumi, you can't strain yourself, you just woke up from." Anko was cut off by Narumi. "Where is my Aniki?" Anko and Kurenai looked at her as she began to tear up. Aniki, he was attacked, and they hurt him bad. "Where is he? Where is Naruto?" Kurenai and Anko looked at each other, not knowing how to break the news to her. Narumi saw the look on their faces and gasped. It wasn't dream. Aniki as he is. Narumi could not hold it in anymore and broke down into sobs as she smashed her face into the pillow. The doors opened as a doctor came in who was promptly shoved aside by 2 very angry kunoichi. The doctor could have sworn he heard Sandaime and dead but chose to ignore it as he went about fixing Narumi's IVs with incredible difficulty. Sandaime's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed as he continued with his paperwork. Most of it was civilian papers that should have been covered by the civilian council, but he chose to do it anyways. Ever since he had retaken his position, he had been hard-pressed to actually do his job while at the same time keeping the village under control. Especially with Minato and Kushin as children. He eventually let the civilian council run their affairs no matter how much the clan heads voted against the idea. He sighed and looked at the picture he had obtained from his secretary. It was a picture of Naruto and Narumi accidentally kissing each other. He chuckled as he looked at the picture, they were so adorable. Sighing, he went to grab his stamp only to stop as he heard crashes of pottery and smashing wood outside the office door when the door suddenly slammed open, and Kurenai and Anko were standing in the doorway, looking incredibly pissed. He raised an eyebrow. "Kurenai, Anko, what are you doing here?" The Sandaime's question was stopped as Anko wrapped her hand around his throat and lifted him up into the air. "You bastard, do you realize what has happened?" Anko loosened the grip she had on Hiruzen's throat and threw him back into his chair. Hiruzen coughed as he tried to speak. "What are you talking about, Anko?" Anko hissed and was about to punch Hiruzen, but Kurenai chose to speak up first. "Did you bother to help Naruto and Narumi out at all? Do you realize what happened because of your neglect?" Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. "Kurenai, the civilian council has assured me that Naruto is safe." Anko practically roared in anger as she kicked the Sandaime's desk, splitting it in half. "The civilians? You actually trust the civilians to keep Naruto safe? Are you an imbecile?" Hiruzen looked at Anko. "For Kami's sake, what are you?" Kurenai grabbed him by the front of his shirt and growled in his face. "Naruto Uzumaki is dead." Those words hit Hiruzen like a ton of bricks. What did you say?" Anko snarled out. "You heard us the first time. Naruto is dead." Hiruzen looked between them. "Are you certain? Are you absolutely certain?" Kurenai dropped Hiruzen and sneered. "Yeah, otherwise Naruto would have come to visit his sister in the hospital." Hiruzen looked at them in confusion. "Narumi is in the hospital? When was she placed there?" Kurenai leaned over and snapped out. 3 weeks. She has been in the hospital for 3 weeks. Hiruzen gasped as he stuttered. What? How? Why was I not told?" Anko narrowed her eyes at Sarutobi. "The civilians probably wanted to make sure you did not know, especially when the whole lot of them have wanted Naruto dead for years." Anko turned around and walked out the door. Kurenai looked at Hiruzen before shaking her head. "Your wife would be ashamed of you," and walked out the door. Hiruzen gasped as he fell back in his chair, a river of tears beginning to flow down his face. "Minato Kushina, I am so sorry." 2 days later. Irika Umino sat at his desk as the students filed in. For the last 3 weeks, Naruto and Narumi had not shown up even once. He was starting to get worried. He wished he could say the same about the other students. Most of the class had adopted their family's hatred of the blonde Jinchuriki. Most of the students went out of their way to make the blonde Jinchuriki miserable. He sighed and stood up as he got ready to take attendance, only to stop as the door to the classroom suddenly opened. He looked up to see who had walked in, only for his eyes to widen in shock. "Okami." Everyone turned to where Irika was looking and gasped. Standing in the doorway was Narumi Uzumaki. She had tear stains all over her face, but the look in her eyes was completely dead. She had a beautiful necklace around her neck, and it looked as if she hadn't showered in weeks. She turned towards Irika and spoke. "Sorry, Irika-sensei, for being late. It won't happen again." The way she said it sent chills down everyone's spines. Ignoring the looks being sent her way, she walked towards her seat and sat down, staring blankly into space. Irika looked at Narumi, then back at the door. "Where is Naruto?" He turned back towards Narumi. "Narumi, by any chance do you know where Naruto is?" Everyone looked at her, waiting for her to answer. The room was silent for a few moments before Narumi spoke. "Naruto is dead." She said it in a mix of a broken and emotionless voice. Everyone gasped in shock, while a mixture of reactions went through the room. Irika expected one of them to speak out in sympathy. "Ha, good riddance." Only to stare in shock at Sakura Haruno, who was grinning as she continued. "It's about time that stupid Baka died. He was useless anyways." Maybe now Narumi will smarten up and actually make something of herself and follow Sasuke like she should. That baka was a no-good piece of crack. Narumi had suddenly appeared next to Sakura and buried her fist in the pink-haired ES face. There was a resounding crack, signifying that her jaw had in fact been broken. Sakura looked up at Narumi and tried to shout, only to cry in pain as she felt her broken jaw. Narumi stomped over to Sakura and grabbed the girl by her hair and hoisted her up. She curled her fist back and punched her in the stomach, knocking the wind out of her. Before Sakura could catch her breath, Narumi tugged on her hair, forcing the girl to look in her eyes, which were filled with murderous rage. If you ever, and I mean ever, speak of my Aniki that way again, she pulled out her knife and placed it at the girl's throat. I will kill. You got it? She dug the knife in a little for good measure. Sakura shook in fear as Narumi dropped her, quickly scurrying back and hiding behind the desk from the blonde girl's wrath. Narumi looked at the rest of the class and shouted, "That goes for the rest of you. Anyone who slanders my Aniki's name, consider your life forfeit." She tucked her dagger away and sat in her seat, holding her look of rage for a few minutes before it turned back into her emotionless look. Iruka sighed as he sat down. "Naruto, I am so sorry." In the hidden village of the ancients, Naruto laid on the ground, covered in a great amount of seals and surrounded by a large stone altar. He had chosen to become a demon as it would make him strong enough to protect his sister. The process of becoming a demon was incredibly difficult. He thought back to when he made his decision to become a demon. Flashback. I guess I have no choice, he looked at Yamato, conviction in his eyes. If it makes me strong enough to protect my Amuto, and I can return to Konoha to protect her, then I would sell my soul. Yamato smiled as he stood. Good, he turned towards the exit. Be ready for after you become a demon, there is no going back. End flashback. He sighed in exhaustion as he examined himself. He had been stripped down to no clothing, and his only decency was a pair of undergarments made from the stems and leaves of a tree. The leaves and stems would be destroyed upon his ascension, but he would be in his demon form, or at least the beginning stage then. His body was covered in many demonic seals that stemmed from each point of the Shiki Fuin seal on his stomach. The runes all lead to a single set of seals, which lead to a tall pillar. Each pillar had a seat atop it, and each seat had a series of kanji. The kanji spelled out the clan that each person was from: Kitsune, Hibi, Tanuki, the whole works. There were 45 pillars in total. Yamato no Orochi finished the final seal and smiled at his work. Finally he stood up high and shouted, "Everybody, into your positions." Atop each pillar, the head of each house stood upon the great monoliths, and sat upon the stone seats. Tamamo sat upon the Kitsune pillar, while Yamato no Orochi sat upon the Hibi pillar. On the outside of the spectacular rings, 45 cloaked figures stood behind each pillar and chanted in the demon tongue as a great aura surrounded them. They pressed their palms upon a seal in each pillar, and their aura consumed the pillar. The demon clan heads all took in deep breaths as they felt the energy of the cloaked men flow through them. The top of the seats split open, revealing a white gem in each seat. The gems glowed a bright color, each gem glowed a different color. In an instant, all the gems shot a great beam of energy at Naruto, engulfing him in a chromatic glow, and showering the entire field with a bright aura. Naruto bit his lip and clenched his teeth, as pain shot through his body. On his navel, the seals that were laid out around him burned into the Shiki Fuin seal and into his body. His eyes shot open as he screamed in absolute agony. The clan heads let out a deep breath as the beams stopped. Yamato no Orochi leaned forward. Now, to which clan shall he belong? Naruto was rolling on the ground as the seal on his stomach glowed from red to black, to white, and to every other color in the chromatic spectrum. The seal began to warp into different colors faster and faster. Naruto rolled onto his knees and elbows and began to pound his fist into the ground. The energy around him became suffocating, and the clan heads all leaned forward. Yamato no Orochi narrowed his eyes further. To whom shall he become? Which clan shall gain a new member? Naruto rolled onto his back as the aura suddenly fell before his eyes shot open as a white glow erupted from his eyes and mouth. RWWOERRAWWW. A massive shockwave blew out from Naruto's form and exploded forth. A great wind slammed into the pillars, as well as their clan heads. All of them were covering their eyes from the sheer force of the aura. An aura that was nothing like any of theirs. Yamato no Orochi's eyes widened in shock. Impossible, how could he possibly become that of all things? Naruto stood up, his white aura forming into the demon he would become. The aura spread into a feathery form, and claws erupted from limbs. 4 angelic wings developed, and the head and tail of a great dragon formed. Naruto snapped his eyes open as the seal shattered as he let loose a loud roar. RWWOERRAWWW. The aura mimicked his movements, and its wings spread wide. Naruto then fell to his knees only to be caught by a red-haired man. Yasui Tensai the Kyubi no Yoko, and Nidaime Rinsaikage was free. Realm of Death. The Shinigami's eyes snapped open and looked at his blade. There were 8 lines on his blade's hilt. One of the lines vanished in a cloud of dust. The god had a thoughtful look on his face. So, Kyuubi is free. He raised his hand and placed it upon a glass orb. The orb suddenly lit up and revealed the face of Minato Namikaze. Our contract is broken, you may have back what you lost. A ball of light extended from the Shinigami's eye and shot into the orb. 5 days later, Konoha. The matron of the orphanage stood outside of Narumi's room. Narumi-chan, Kurenai, and Anko are here. Are you finished packing? The door opened to reveal Narumi in her still disheveled condition. Yes, I am finished packing. The matron felt her heart break at the sound of Narumi's voice. It was broken, cold, empty. She kneeled down and placed her hands upon Narumi's shoulders. Narumi, I know you are hurting, but your Aniki would not wish to see you this way. He would want you to become strong, show a happy smile to the world. Narumi looked at the matron worker and shrugged her shoulders, making her let go. My Aniki wanted to be at my side for as long as I lived, but he didn't get that either. She pushed past the matron worker and headed towards the doors leading to the lobby. She opened them to see Kurenai Yuhi and Anko Mitarashi standing at the front desk, filling out some paperwork. The receptionist looked over the paperwork and nodded. Everything is in order. You two are now officially the legal caretakers of Narumi Uzumaki. I wish we could instate you two as official guardians, but I am afraid that the guardianship only applied if both her and her brother were adopted. She sighed. It was one of the Sandame's decrees, one of many I don't wholly agree with. Kurenai nodded her head. I understand, Anko, and I will take good care of her. Anko snorted, then noticed Narumi walking out of the door. A grin came to the snake mistress' face. Hey Narumi, how you doing? Narumi looked at Anko with a dead look and answered, I am fine, Anko-san. Can we leave now? This place holds too many memories. She adjusted her pack and walked out the doorway. I would have left here anyways, even if you two had chosen not to care for me. She walked out the doorway and sat on the steps. The matron worker and the receptionist cringed as they looked at Narumi. The matron turned towards Anko and Kurenai. Please, I beg you, try to help her. Kurenai nodded her head. We shall do all that we can. Anko and Kurenai bowed as they left the orphanage and went outside with Narumi. Narumi sadly looked at her necklace, the only thing left in the world that she had left of her beloved Aniki. She grasped it tightly in her hands and whispered, I swear, Aniki, I will make your murderers suffer for what they did to you. Anko and Kurenai had heard her vow and frowned. They did not want her to follow a path of vengeance and end up like others who have devoted themselves to revenge. It was a path bathed in blood and pain. Kurenai leaned down and placed her hand on Narumi's shoulder. Come on, Narumi, let's go. Kurenai stood up and was about to walk down the stairs. And just what do you think you are doing with our daughter? Anko, Kurenai, and Narumi snapped around to see who had spoken. A man with golden spiky hair, electric blue eyes, and a white haori with flames licking the bottom was grinning at them. At his side was a red-haired woman with grayish-colored eyes. Between the two were 2 5-year-old children. One boy and one girl, both had blonde hair with red highlights. The man turned towards Narumi. Hey Narumi, he leaned down and opened his arms. Come give your old man a hug. With that, onward the 4th chapter, and wish good ride. Narumi stood still, slowly processing what this man before her just told her, what he had just said, that he was in fact her father. Her mind was going a mile a minute, only a single word being able to escape her lips. W what? The red-haired woman smiled and stepped forward. That's right, sunshine, we're your parents. She looked down towards the boy and girl standing next to her. Well, go on, say hello to your Nei-san. Narumi's eyes widened as she heard what this woman said, and her gaze turned to the 2 children who smiled towards her. They were her younger siblings. If what these 2 were saying was true, then. The 2 ran up to Narumi and wrapped her in a hug. Hi Nei-san. Giggling as they hugged her closely. Kurenai and Anko were staring at the 2 before them in shock. It just wasn't possible. The Yandame Hokage Minato Namikaze and the Red Death Kushina Uzumaki were alive? It just wasn't possible. Kurenai and Anko both placed their hands into a ram's seal kai and tried to release whatever henge or genjutsu was up. The 2 legends were still there. Minato and Kushina looked at the 2 quizzically as they performed a release seal. What are you doing? Kurenai shook as she pointed towards them. Why, you're not illusions, are you? Kushina raised an eyebrow. No, what on earth would give you that idea? Minato spoke up. I mean, come on, we've only been away for what, 6 years? He looked at both Kurenai and Anko. I'm assuming that you are my children's guardians if you are with my daughter, so surely you must have been told. Speaking of my children, where's my son Naruto? He looked around, expecting to see him slinking around with his guardians. Kushina looked around too. Naruto, where are you, sweetie? Anko and Kurenai found themselves shaking in rage and confusion. Naruto, Minato, and Kushina stopped looking around and turned to who had spoken and found Narumi trembling as her 2 younger siblings moved away from her. My Aniki Naruto is dead. That simple statement made the faces of both Minato and Kushina pale until it was almost the same shade as Orochimaru's. What did you say? Kushina barely managed to stutter out. Narumi looked up at them, with cold dead eyes. Because you weren't there for us, because you left us alone. Tears began to flow from her eyes, the dead look in them never fading. My Aniki, my beloved Aniki is dead. Kushina stumbled as she heard Narumi's statement, and Minato shook his head, and no, it can't be true. Anko and Kurenai were staring at the two, and Anko finally spoke up. Yandame-sama. Minato turned to her. With all due respect, where the fuck were you? Anko shouted and stepped forward menacingly, only for Kurenai to grab her before she attacked the yandame. Anko struggled in Kurenai's grip as she shouted, because you two fuckers didn't bother to check up on your kids. They have endured a hell on earth. Minato and Kushina's eyes widened, not believing what Anko had just said to them. Hell on earth? Kushina stuttered out as she tried to keep her composure. Minato spoke up, confusion evident in his voice. What in Kami's name are you talking about? I thought I made my wishes clear. The Minato was suddenly frozen as a wave of Ki washed over him, Kushina, and their children like a tsunami over a flat surface. Kurenai and Anko shivered as the Ki hit them as well. Apparently the Ki was washing into several homes, as people started to pour out of their homes, who were met with the shock of their lives as they saw the yandame himself standing before them. The yandame is alive? How is this possible? Did he come to destroy the demon once and for all? Minato found himself shaking in anger as he heard the comments, all of them hatefully directed towards his son. Everyone slowly turned in the direction the Ki was coming from, and saw a sight that would haunt their dreams forever. Standing there, Narumi had a cyclone of chakra lashing around her like a tornado as clouds of dust were kicked up. Her face held an emotionless look, tears still flowing from her eyes, however, held a crazed look to them. Her fists were white as she squeezed down on them, tightening her fists until blood was streaming from between her fingers as her nails dug into her flesh. Narumi's mind was echoing out, kill, torture, maim, and the chakra lashed around in anger at anyone and anything that got too close. Her two younger siblings shivered and stood behind their parents as Kushina fell to her knees, barely being able to breathe, and Minato shook his head as he felt her chakra levels. It just wasn't possible. The levels of chakra were at least low Jonin level. Narumi turned towards Minato with barely held bloodlust. Because of you, my Aniki, my Naruto. Her lips contorted into a hate-filled snarl as she shouted, "Is dead age." She leapt at Minato as she pulled out her dagger, and swung it at his legs. Minato barely dodged the attack from his daughter. No 6-year-old should be this fast, he inwardly screamed. Narumi slashed at him, her eyes filled with hatred and anger for her father. Everyone was still too shocked by the Ki to stop her as they watched her try and kill her father. Finally, Kushina broke out of her stupor and ran over, wrapping her arms around Narumi and pinning her. Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze, stop right this SECCHH. Kushina let go of Narumi as she bit her arm and charged at her father again. Minato tried to grab Narumi's arm only for her to stab the dagger clear through his palm. AGHHHHH. Narumi ripped the dagger out and was about to stab it into Minato's head when her arms were grabbed by Kurenai and Anko as she was lifted off of the ground. Minato looked up at his daughter, who was thrashing in Kurenai and Anko's grip as she screamed. I'll kill you, do you hear me? I'll fucking kill you! She continued to thrash around in their grip, until Anko delivered a knife strike to Narumi's neck, effectively knocking her unconscious. Kurenai turned towards Minato. We will be taking care of Narumi from now on. Kurenai hoisted Narumi in her arms as Kushina walked over. Kushina grabbed Kurenai by the shoulder and forced her to look at her. What do you mean you will be taking care of her? She is our daughter. Anko shoved Kushina away from Kurenai and snapped, you should have thought of that before you abandoned her and her brother 6 years ago. She grabbed Kurenai's arm and led her away from Minato, Kushina, and the two young children. Minato slowly stood up and turned towards the Hokage tower as he gripped his fists tightly. We have much to discuss, Sarutobi. In Kurenai's arms, Narumi's eyes fluttered open, lightly revealing her cerulean blue eyes, before they slowly shifted to slitted pink before her eyes closed completely. Aniki. With Naruto. Naruto's eyes fluttered as he groggily began to wake up. He found himself in what appeared to be a hospital room, but there were clearly things inside that were not in a normal hospital, namely torches and many demon-like runes covering the walls. He groaned as he reached up and grabbed his face, feeling slightly nauseous from the demonification process. He was about to try and sit up when he heard voices nearby. How is it possible that this child has become one of them? It just can't be possible. Can it? We aren't sure, but we need to run diagnostics before we decide anything on who the boy will go to. Naruto slowly turned his head, and found himself looking at all of the leaders of the various clans discussing something, and apparently, he was the main topic. He slowly sat up and felt a sharp pain course through his body, grrn. Everyone in the room turned to him, and several of them ran over and started checking him over. Tamamo pushed them all aside and gently set Naruto on his back. Easy there, kid, you just woke up from an extremely painful process. You shouldn't strain yourself so early after just waking up. Ha ha ha, you're wasting your time, Tamamo-chan. That little squirt won't stay down unless we tie him down with Yuki-reinforced chains. Naruto looked to the side, and his eyes widened as he saw Yasui Tensai, the Kyubi no Yoko, and Nidaime Rinsaikage. Yasui noticed the look of shock on Naruto's face and grinned, what, surprised that the ritual actually worked. Naruto nervously coughed and looked away, making Yasui sigh and rub his forehead. Right, wrong question to ask anyways, how are you feeling, Naruto? He walked over and pulled up a chair, before seating himself in it as he looked at the young former Jinchuriki. Naruto groaned and grabbed his head. I would feel better if the bastard inside my head would stop throwing explosive notes. Yasui chuckled at how Naruto put that he had a headache. Oh, don't worry, that's normal for you to have a headache after your ascension into demonhood. It should fade in a little while. Naruto nodded his head and sighed. Damn, how long was I out? Yasui placed a finger to his chin. Not long, in fact, you were only out for about a half an hour. Quite out really, but then again, after becoming what you are now, I wouldn't put it past you. Naruto looked up at Yasui in confusion. After becoming what I am, what is that supposed to mean? Yasui opened his mouth to speak, only for Yamato no Orochi to place his hand on Yasui's shoulder. I believe I should tell him, Nidaime-sama. After all, it is my duty as the current Rinsaikage. Yasui nodded his head. Alright then, by all means. He leaned back and crossed his legs as Yamato no Orochi pulled up a chair and sat in front of Naruto. Yamato no Orochi took a deep breath and sighed. Naruto, when I said that you would have to become a demon to survive having Nidaime-sama removed from your body, I was not being wholly honest. There is in fact another way for you to have survived the removal process without becoming a demon. The problem is that so few humans have the capability of becoming what you are now, that it is essentially a useless endeavor to try and turn them. Naruto looked at Yamato no Orochi. What have I become exactly? Yamato no Orochi sighed. For you to understand what you are, we will have to tell you the history of our village. And I would be a liar if I told you it would be easy to explain in a short time frame. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I have time. He sat back and tuned to Yamato no Orochi. Yamato no Orochi sighed. Very well. He stood up and beckoned towards Naruto. Follow me. He turned towards the door, the other clan heads stepping aside as he walked through. Naruto stood up and followed after him, along with Yasui and Tamamo. They walked down the long hallway, passing by many doorways with various symbols. After what felt like hours of walking, Yamato no Orochi finally stopped in front of a door that was different from all the others. On the front of the door, an ornate design was apparent, one that looked to be thousands of years old if the cracks of age were anything to go by. Yamato no Orochi grasped the door's handle and pulled it open, before walking inside. Naruto followed after him, and his eyes nearly flew out of their sockets. Inside the single doorway appeared a massive cavern, large enough to fit the Hokage tower inside, and then some. They were standing atop a great ledge overlooking the cavern, a spiral staircase leading down towards the bottom of the cavern, which apparently had some sort of temple built. Yamato no Orochi walked down the staircase, Naruto following close behind, along with Yasui and Tamamo. The staircase circled around the entire cavern as it finally met the bottom of the cavern. By the time Naruto's feet touched the bottom of the cavern, his legs felt as if they were made of jello. Yamato no Orochi suddenly stopped, and turned towards Naruto. Naruto, where you now stand is the birthplace of our great village. He pointed towards the walls, which lit up with a heavenly glow. Our entire history, starting from the beginning, is all written here. Naruto's eyes widened as his gaze traversed over the ornate drawings. The pictures showed Kitsune, Tanuki, and various other Yuki. He recognized some of them to be the Bijou themselves, but there was more. There were other beasts, creatures with foul skeletal bodies, sagging flesh, and an aura of darkness surrounding them. They looked to be monsters from the foulest of nightmares and imagination. Naruto turned, gazing at the pictures depicting the two factions fighting alongside each other and against each other. He continued to examine the artwork until his gaze landed on a massive mural, one that could not possibly have been made by mortal hands. The mural depicted two great beings standing before each other, a single arm outstretched towards the other, each one different from the other. On one side, a great white feather dragon with golden scaled armor plating and beautiful blue eyes stood proudly. His four angelic wings outstretched as his hand held out a glowing orb of light. On the other side stood a humanoid beast with black skin, and a crimson-colored chest stood high, his twin bat-like wings spread out as far as the dragon's. Two long horns pointed out from either side of his head as his whip-like tail flew about, his hand holding a glowing orb of darkness. Beneath the mural was an epitaph, depicting the mural before him. Praise be to Seiken no Ten no Sora, and Graham no Bakiatari Tainan, saviors of the demon hordes. Naruto's eyes widened at the mural's epitaph, and gazed up at the two figures. Clearly, whoever these two were, they were highly revered. He looked around towards the next mural, which was very different. It showed the same two figures from before, arguing with each other by the looks of it, and if the small human in between them was any indication, it was in regards to humanity. The next mural showed the two of them engaged in a great battle with each other, both of them intending to kill the other. The murals continued, showing the same two figures, but on the last one it changed, showing instead of the two figures engaging in battle with each other, it showed the angelic dragon fighting against some sort of chimera. It was a beast over 3 times the size of the dragon, and looked like some sort of hybrid between a goat, a lion, and a snake. Naruto was so preoccupied with the murals that he never noticed Yamato no Orochi walk up behind him and place his hand upon his shoulder. Naruto jumped as he felt the Rinsaike's hand touch his shoulder, and turned to look at Yamato no Orochi. Yamato no Orochi looked up. What you see before you, Naruto, is the entire history of our village and before. He turned and walked towards a pedestal sitting in the center of the room. He stopped and beckoned for Naruto to follow. The young former Jinchuriki followed after him quickly. When Naruto reached the pedestal, Yamato no Orochi sighed. When I told you that we were having problems with a rival village, I told you that in time we would tell you the reasons for this. He pointed towards the pedestal, to which Naruto looked at. On the top of the pedestal, a single blue gem with white demonic runes covering it sat in a spiral-shaped metal. Yamato no Orochi looked towards Naruto. It would take me many years to tell you the history of our race, Naruto, but there is a quicker way. He indicated towards the stone. This, Naruto, is the prize jewel of our village, the Arcadia no Tama. Every Rinsaike, since the Shodaime himself first has placed all their knowledge, their memories, and the history of our race in this stone. He looked at Naruto, and now it is time for one to view it, who is not the Rinsaike. Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to the stone. View it? Why, you mean me? Yamato no Orochi opened his mouth to answer. Are you mad? Both Naruto and Yamato no Orochi turned towards Yasui and Tamamo, who finally made it down the stairs. I admit that while I was Rinsaike, I did things that were far from protocol, but to allow somebody to view from the Arcadia no Tama, that is just pure ludicrous. Yamato no Orochi turned towards Kyubi. If young Naruto can become what he is now, then by all that is holy, he has the right to view his heritage. He turned towards Naruto. Touch the stone, Naruto, and the truth shall be revealed. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat and turned towards the gem before him. He slowly reached his hand out and touched the stone. Almost instantly, his mind was flooded with the memories of the past Rinsaike all the way to the beginning. Oxoxoxoxoxoxo. Flashback. 3,000 years ago, when humans were unable to control the energies within them, demons roamed the lands freely, wreaking havoc on the world of man. They roamed from the realms of Makai freely, and in large numbers. For centuries, it seemed as if the demons would soon rule the mortal world. One day, after hearing the prayers of man, Kami asked her sister, Queen of Makai, to close the portals connecting the human world and Makai, never to be opened again. Sadly, in her haste to answer the humans' prayers, she forgot to have the demons return to Makai, where they could never again harm the rule of man on earth. The demons were forever trapped on the mortal plane, and forever cut off from their beloved home of Makai. For several more centuries, the demons then began to fight amongst themselves, for no other reason except that they could. After 300 years, the demon horde's numbers dwindled from the hundreds of thousands to just below a few thousand. It seemed imminent that the demons would eventually kill themselves, until none remained. However, in the seas of chaos, there were two who saw the destruction for what it was, and wished for it to stop. Standing atop a great cliff, examining the great battleground of dead or dying demons, smoking earth, and burning rivers, two great demons felt their hearts break at the sight of their own races killing each other, and themselves. One was a mighty dragon, greater in size than any building, his white feathers flowing from in between his golden scales as his blue eyes scanned the landscape. His 4 angelic wings were limply held at his side. His name was Saiken. Beside the dragon, a tall humanoid, equal in size to the dragon, squatted as his long talons dug into the side of the mountain, his twin horns pointing outwards, and his 2 bat-like wings folded against his back. His name was Graham. Graham looked up at Saiken. Saiken, this madness must end. He spread his arms out. Look around us, my friend. Soon this will become the norm, and soon our race will face extinction. Graham stood up, sending rocks flying towards the ground below. The time for us to remain neutral has ended. We must act now. Saiken looked towards Graham. Graham, while I wish for this senseless genocidal war to end, how are we to save our race? He looked towards the field. Our tribes regularly attack unarmed settlements of demons. Reducing our already dwindling population of females, our only alternative to breeding is with human females, a notion that disgusts me. Graham held out his claw to Saiken. In the same way that we became friends, Saiken, in the same way our fathers desired, we must unite our tribes. Saiken stared at Graham. Before he snapped, are you mad? What makes you think our tribes will yield? Stop this war simply to unite with one another? Graham sighed and turned away. Saiken, we must be the ones to unite them. He turned towards Saiken, who looked at Graham with confusion. Graham turned towards Saiken and grasped his shoulders. For Yami's sake, Saiken, it is no secret that you are the most powerful Yuki to ever be born, far exceeding the power your father once held. Saiken turned away at the mention of his father, and while I do not mean to boast, you know that I am the strongest of the Hellspawn to ever set foot from the womb, that is Makai. He released Saiken's shoulders. Saiken, together we can stop this war. Saiken turned towards Graham. You're right, Graham, this war must end now. Graham smiled. Excellent. He turned towards the cliff, and spread out his bat-like wings. Before turning towards Saiken, I will unite the Hellspawn and the corrupted. You take care of the Yuki. He ran towards the edge and jumped off just before shouting out as he took to flight, best of luck to you, my friend, and sailed across the burning plains. Saiken nodded towards Graham as he turned, and to you, my friend. His body exploded in a shower of light, and shot across the landscape. It was a simple task for Graham and Saiken to rally the demon tribes together. Their strength and charisma brought many to their sides. After 7 long years, finding the tribes, and uniting them under a common goal, the demon hordes began to prosper once more. Finally, after all the tribes had been united, and their race began to prosper on the human plane, all that remained was the question where to go from here. What the Yuki and Saiken wanted was completely opposite of what the Hellspawn and corrupted wanted, along with Graham the destruction of the age of man. Saiken stared at his longtime friend in shock and horror. Are you mad? We just barely saved ourselves from a war that would have driven ourselves to extinction, and now you wish to start another one? Have you lost your mind? Graham shook his head. I really had high hopes for you, my friend, but it seems that my faith was misplaced in you. He turned his gaze towards Saiken, their eyes meeting. But surely, you have not forgotten what the humans have done to you, my friend. Saiken winced and turned away, the memories of how his family was murdered by the humans inciting his father's genocide. He shook his head of these thoughts and turned towards Graham. No, as a matter of fact, I have not forgotten, nor have forgiven the humans. I still resent them beyond all others. But he took a deep breath, and turned towards Graham with ferocity in his eyes. But I will not foolishly let my hatred jeopardize our people. I will not say that we should make peace with them, as I know that because of how judgmental they are, that they will never even consider creating lasting peace with our kind, but at the very least we should attempt to coexist with them. Saiken turned away from Graham and looked over the Yuki whom he had united, who he viewed as precious in all forms. However, he turned to look towards Graham, a fierce look in his eyes. If they ever tried to harm my people, and those I consider precious, I would unleash a terror upon them that would make then anything my father had ever conceived from his wrath pale in comparison to my fury. He sighed and turned completely towards Graham. But I will not foolishly attack them without justifiable cause. Graham sighed deeply. So it has come to this. I'm afraid that the difference in our ideals show that this will be our last meeting as friends. Graham turned towards his own people, the Hellspawn and corrupted, and then looked towards the Yuki as well, letting loose a great roar as he spoke. To all of you who wish to show the humans their place, to show them just who is first in the natural order of things, follow me, and we shall make this world our very own Makai. Many of the Hellspawn and corrupted let loose cheers and whoops of praise towards Graham. Saiken, however, narrowed his eyes towards Graham. What do you mean your very own Makai? You are not talking about a dead wasteland of brimstone and fire, are you? Graham flattened his wings against his back and nodded his head. I am Saiken. The world of man is not suited for our tastes. We Hellspawn and corrupted thrive in the lifeless plains of brimstone and the rivers of fire, not the grassy plains and thriving forests. Saiken snarled as he stepped forward. You know full well that neither I, nor any Yuki can survive in that kind of environment. It is the main reason why so many Yuki left Makai, why what few oases for our race were abandoned because of overpopulation for the mortal plane. Here, it is one big ecosystem where our race can thrive, and now you wish to take that from us? Saiken's eyes glowed with ferocity. I am afraid, Graham, that I cannot allow that. Graham smirked. We shall see. Saiken, a dark corrupted aura swept forth from Graham's position over the other Hellspawn and corrupted. We shall see indeed. All of the Hellspawn and corrupted were swept away in a demonic wave as they teleported away from the area. Saiken looked down sadly, and turned away just before he uttered, when next we meet Graham it will not be as allies. Saiken walked towards his people, the assortment of Yuki, who followed their leader in whatever cause he deemed fitting. Years passed, and Saiken and Graham founded 2 villages, each one built for their respective races. The hidden village of the ancients was built under a great tree, in an even greater forest, forever protected by the natural shields of nature. The hidden village of the damned was built within a great volcanic plain, where no life outside of the Hellspawn and corrupted could survive. For many years, humans tried to destroy them, sending army after army against them in hopes of bringing them down. Each attempt was met with ruthless strikes that left none of the invading forces alive. Finally, after several years, the humans eventually began to forget these villages, fading into legend and finally into myth. The 2 villages remained strong, twice the two villages' leaders, Graham and Saiken, and twice the battles ended in a stalemate. In the second battle, however, Saiken nearly killed Graham when he delivered a near-fatal blow to his heart. Graham's experience was the only thing that managed to keep him alive that day, the deep jagged scar on his chest, a permanent reminder of what he had almost lost his life. Graham realized that he was getting nowhere with these constant battles with his old friend. If these battles continued, then their two villages would forever be in a stalemate. He had but one option left for victory. He had to use a forbidden summoning, one that not even the cruelest lords of Makai would have condoned. He had to summon a demon titan, only then would his victory be assured. When Saiken discovered what Graham intended to do, fear gripped his heart. As powerful as he was no match for a titan. The titans were the second strongest demons in Makai, only the demon gods and the gods themselves able to surpass them in strength. He, a Daiyuki lord, was no match for one of the titans. He might be able to hold the titan off for a few days before he himself succumbed to defeat, but he would eventually fall before the titan's wrath. However, there was a way they could win. He knew it would take several decades for Graham to find everything he needed to summon the titan, and in that time, he could gain the power and the allies he needed to stop the titan when it was finally unleashed. Immediately, he tasked the Department of Demon Spells and Rituals to finalize a ritual that he and the clan heads of the village had been working on for the last decade or so. A ritual to create a jubi, the only thing in existence that could challenge a titan that was not a demon god, or a god itself. The ritual itself would need the aid of all the clan heads, and the most powerful warriors in all of the village of the ancients, a special force which had been named the Bijou. The Ichibi no Shikaku, the Nibi no Bakaniko, the Sanbai no Kaidegame, the Yambi no Saru, the Gobi no Irakoma, the Rokubi no Namakuji, the Nanabai no Kabutamushi, the Hachibi no Kyogyu, and the Kyubi no Yoko, the only members of their clans, to become fully fledged Daiyuki lords. However, in the middle of the ritual, something went horribly wrong. He 9 Bijou formed together as planned, and became a jubi, but instead of having a calm collective intelligence, the jubi was filled with murderous rage, malice, and an aura darker even than Graham himself. The 10-tailed Daiyuki immediately laid waste to part of the village, and would have utterly destroyed it had Saiken not driven the beast from their home. Saiken ordered that a counter-spell be created before he went after the jubi to stop its rampage before things got out of hand. For 7 years, Saiken followed the path of destruction the jubi set forth. Never before in his life had he seen such destruction, not since the Ragnarok genocide, the genocide set forth by his own father. Finally, the counter-spell had been completed, and Saiken found the location of the jubi too late, it would seem. By some sort of fluke, the humans managed to stop the jubi's rampage, sealing the power and soul inside a human priest, and the body inside the moon itself. Saiken quickly took the body from the moon without the humans knowing, and as the priest slept, placed a seal on him that would release the jubi's soul and power back into the original 9. He waited for the priest's decaying health to finally claim him, viewing the beginning of what would become the most brutal blood feud in all of history, the birth of the Senju and Uchiha clans. Finally, the priest died, and the Bijou reformed themselves, using the jubi's body as a catalyst to give them back their life. And then the terror which Saiken had dreaded finally arrived. Graham had summoned a demon titan to destroy their village, but not before the titan struck Graham down, ending his reign before it laid waste to the village of the damned, before turning towards the village of the ancients to accomplish its original goal, the destruction of Saiken and the village of the ancients. Luckily, Saiken had a countermeasure, just in case the jubi failed. In secret, he had worked on a spell that would be able to destroy the titan once and for all. He had completed it, just after the titan had been summoned by Graham. Saiken flew towards the great fields connecting the village of the ancients and the village of the damned, and gazed upon the monstrosity that Graham had summoned to bring about his end. The beast before him was 3 times his size. It held the face of a lion, but its snout was slightly elongated. Goat-like horns tore themselves from the beast's head. It walked upon 6 legs, its front legs bearing lion-like claws with humanoid hands, and its back legs in the shape of a goat's. It bore a long tail with the head of a cobra at the end. The beast before him was none other than the Titaness Chimera, Queen of Chaos. The two battled for 7 days and 7 nights, tearing the landscape from the earth, and creating landmarks of destruction that would exist for an eternity. Those that had the courage to watch the two battle were awestruck by the power the two displayed. On the eve of the 8th day, Saiken cast his spell upon the Titaness, and as the sun rose, the truth of why he made the spell in secret was revealed. The spell would destroy the soul of caster and the victim, erasing them from existence. There was no body to bury, as both the Titaness and Saiken became as dust in the wind. The spell was deemed forbidden, all existing copies of it destroyed by the High Council of the village of the ancients. For 3 months, the village mourned the death of Saiken, and for 700 years, the village was left without a single leader. In those 700 years, Saiken was to the Yuki as Kami herself no other was more revered than he. End flashback. Naruto jumped away from the stone, clutching his head in pain as he began to breathe rapidly. After several minutes, he looked up towards Yamato no Orochi. Yamato no Orochi sighed and spoke, "Our rival village is the hidden village of the damned apparently. Even after the Titanus laid waste, the village brought itself back to life." He looked towards Yasui. After 700 years of the village running itself, the High Council elected that Yasui-sama himself would become the knight aim of our village, and the line of the Rinsaikage was born. Shodame-sama was the lord of the hidden village of the ancients, but he was not declared Rinsaikage until after it was decided that our village would be ruled by a Rinsaikage. Naruto stood up shakily, and looked up towards Yamato no Orochi. But I still don't know what am I." Yamato no Orochi walked over to a small shelf located off to the side, and pulled out a thick book. On the front were demonic runes that depicted the book's title, to which Naruto did not understand. Yamato no Orochi brought the book over to Naruto, and opened it up, revealing an image of Saiken. Saiken-sama was the most powerful creature to ever be born, the son of the two most powerful beings of his kind, more powerful than anything ever conceived from Mikai's burning womb. He looked towards Naruto. Saiken was not like other Yuki. He was not born in the belly of Mikai. He was not conceived in that foul plane of existence. He was conceived in the plains of the heavens under Kami's light. Naruto looked at Yamato no Orochi in shock and confusion. "What am I?" Yamato no Orochi sighed and answered, "Naruto Uzumaki, you are a celestial beast, the child of Kami-sama herself, a Genesis dragon." Konoha. Narumi laid in her hospital bed after Kurenai and Anko had brought her there to patch her up from the injuries she had sustained. Her palms had been completely sliced open, and the bones in her hand had actually been scratched by her nails. The doctors were astounded that the hand was still usable. Outside, Kurenai and Anko were talking with the doctor. "So, how long until we can expect her to physically recover from this ordeal?" The doctor sighed as he looked at the diagrams. "Honestly, if you were asking me to discern this for a normal child, I might be able to tell you. But with Narumi, I honestly can't say." Anko narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" The doctor sighed as he flipped over one of the papers. "For some reason, we just can't use any medical ninjutsu on her. It's as if her natural chakra is trying to repel our medical chakra. Also, her body is shifting healing rates. At certain points it heals as fast as a Jinchuriki normally would, and at other points, it heals slower than an average human." He took a deep breath, and something else. Kurenai and Anko moved closer. "What do you mean, something else?" The doctor flipped over another sheet. "As we ran a diagnostic jutsu on her, we found that a part of her brain had been opened. But the odd thing is that this portion of the brain only opens in certain cases." Kurenai took a deep breath and asked, "And what would that case be?" The doctor sighed and was about to speak when they heard loud shouts and crashes outside the hospital. They headed over to the window and saw a large mob of both civilians and shinobi trying to break into the hospital grounds. The doctor cursed, "Shit, what the hell is going on?" Kurenai and Anko, having well-trained senses, heard exactly what the people were saying. "Release the Yandame's daughter. Keep the snake whore and the ice away from her. Give her back, you bastards." Kurenai and Anko cursed under their breath. Apparently, the news that Narumi was actually the Yandame's daughter spread through the village like wildfire. They were about to head into Narumi's room when they suddenly found two people standing behind them. One man and one woman. "Don't worry, Kurenai, Anko will take care of Narumi from here." "Yep, you can count on us." Kurenai and Anko nodded their heads. "Alright, thank you, Kakashi." Rin. They headed towards the lobby to stop the mob from entering the building, followed closely by the doctor. Kakashi and Rin sighed and walked towards the door to Narumi's room, but Rin grabbed Kakashi's wrist and spoke. "I'm worried, Kakashi-kun. What if she knows it was us who killed Naruto?" Kakashi, I smiled towards Rin. "Don't worry, Rin. How could she possibly know? She wasn't anywhere near there when that happened. She couldn't possibly know it was us." Rin looked away, tears brimming at her eyes. "I feel horrible. I mean, she let out a choke sob. We killed Minato-sensei's son. How could we doubt him so easily as to disregard his final wishes like that?" Kakashi embraced Rin and hugged her. "I know, Rin-chan, if I could bring Naruto back, I would do it in a heartbeat." He looked at Rin. "But we can still make amends for our sins. We both know that Naruto loved his sister more than anything, that he would do just about anything for her. If we can make her strong, a legend in her own right, then Naruto may forgive us in the afterlife." Rin looked at Kakashi and smiled. "You're right, Kakashi-kun." She let go of Kakashi's wrist, allowing him to open the door. Inside, Narumi turned as she heard the door open, her eyes widening at who was before her. Kakashi and Rin smiled towards her. "Hello, Narumi-chan, how are you doing today?" Rin smiled and pointed to herself. "My name is Rin, and this is Kakashi. You were hoping we could talk to you for a little bit." Narumi's eyes widened further. She recognized both of them. She knew who they were. They were her Aniki's murderers. She raised a finger and pointed at them. "Killed Aniki." Rin and Kakashi quirked an eyebrow. Could you repeat that?" Narumi's eyes began to water as her teeth clenched. You killed my Aniki. Rin and Kakashi felt their hearts clench as they paled. She had seen them kill her brother. Rin stepped forward, and Narumi, I know what we did was wrong, but please understand that. Narumi jumped out of the bed and shouted, you took my Naruto from me. She leapt at Rin and stabbed her in the leg with a nearby syringe, causing the former member of Team Minato to fall over in pain. Narumi bared her teeth and slammed her body into Rin's, causing her to smash her head against the wall. Rin groaned in pain as blood began to pour from the injury on her head before she gasped for breath as Narumi grabbed her by the throat and forced her to look at her. Narumi's eyes were filled with hatred and bloodlust, the desire to murder. As Rin tried to get out of Narumi's abnormally strong grip, she froze as Narumi's eyes changed. The normal blue became pink, and her pupils slitted as her eyes glowed in hatred and bloodlust, and Rin found her world go dark. Genjutsu. Rin snapped her eyes open and looked around. She was in some sort of dungeon with chains wrapped around her arms and legs. In front of her was a medical cart with several objects on it: a scalpel, a bucket of salt, a rotten lemon, and a cheese cutter. Creak, the door to the room opened, and a shadowed figure walked inside. He stood in front of the cart, and took out a knife-sharpening rope as he began to sharpen the scalpel. Rin began to shake in terror as the man looked at her with a dark glint in his eye. He grabbed the cheese cutter and walked over to her, examining her skin. She swallowed the foaming lump in her throat. What are you going to do? The man turned to look at her and grinned darkly. Nothing you don't deserve, wench. The man spoke in the same voice Naruto did before he pressed the cheese cutter against Rin's flesh and began to tear the skin off her body. Ag. She screamed in agony as she felt her skin being torn from her body. Please stop. It hurts. The man grabbed her chin. Did you stop torturing Naruto when he screamed in agony? Well, did you? His nails lengthened, and he tore his nails through her cheeks, letting the skin flap around. Ag. Blood began to come out of her cheeks as she sobbed. Please, I didn't know he WCHH. The man shoved his hand in her mouth and tore out her tongue. Your voice annoys me. And threw it to the ground, laughing as he watched it flop around. The man continued skinning her, until her body looked like a living piece of meat. He grinned darkly as he grabbed the bucket of salt. I have always enjoyed a salter meal. And threw it over Rin's bleeding and tender body. Mamarer! She tried to scream as her tongueless mouth opened, only for moans of agony to escape as the salt burned into her flesh, causing her more and more agony. The man turned away as he cleaned off the scalpel and what appeared to be alcohol, and walked over to Rin. Now don't fret, I'm only giving you a little haircut. He grabbed Rin by her hair, and yanked her head upwards. Now don't fret, it's just a haircut. He shoved the scalpel just below her scalp, and began to cut off her hair at the roots. Ag, ma'am. Rin screamed in absolute agony as the man slowly scalped her, tearing the flesh of her skull off as he gave her a haircut. Finally the man tore the rest of her scalp off, leaving the place where it was showing her skull, covered in blood. He grinned as he looked at it in her eyes. Tell me, Rin. He placed the bleeding scalp on top of his head, and let the blood-caked hair hang over his eyes. How do I look? Rin squirmed and wheezed in agony as the man took the scalp off his head and threw it to the side, and got into a thoughtful pose. Not bad, but there's something missing. He looked Rin's form over. I just can't place my finger on it. He sighed and shrugged his shoulders. Oh well, he snapped his fingers and grinned as he pulled out a mirror. I guess we will just have to keep going over this, until I get it right. Won't that be fun? Rin looked into the mirror expecting to see her bloody form. Instead she saw her body in perfect condition. Her eyes quivered in horror as she looked at the man, who was now standing behind her, gently spreading her legs. He grinned evilly. Ooh, I know just how we can start the next phase. He grabbed her ass, and started towards his belt. Rin shivered and shook. No, please don't, no, no. Rin's cries fell on deaf ears as she was tortured and raped for hours on end. And Genjutsu. Rin's eyes glazed over as drool started pouring out of her mouth. A blank look southeast forth on her face as she fell limp against the wall. Kakashi was so shocked by what Narumi had just done moments ago, that he could not stop her from doing whatever it is she did to Rin. After Kakashi snapped out of his stupor, he moved to help Rin, only to freeze as Narumi turned towards him, her eyes still slitted and pink. She snarled, You will die. She leapt at Kakashi and stabbed him in the leg with her dagger, twisting it around before she yanked it up and made a move to stab it into his throat. Slam! The doors to the room slammed open, and Minato, Kushina, along with their 2 children came barging in. They saw Narumi try to stab Kakashi in the throat, and Kushina grabbed Narumi, lifting her off Kakashi. Narumi thrashed around in Kushina's grip and shouted, Let me go, I'll kill him. I'll fucking kill him. Minato turned towards Narumi. Narumi, what possible reason could you have to kill? He froze as he saw Narumi's eyes. Narumi sneered towards Minato and pointed at Kakashi. He killed him, he killed my Aniki. Minato's eyes widened as he heard what Narumi said. He gritted his teeth and slowly turned towards Kakashi, releasing a small amount of Ki. Kakashi, is this true? Kakashi shivered under Minato's gaze, and turned his head away. This was all the answer Minato needed. Minato grabbed Kakashi by his throat and threw him to the other side of the room, making him crash into the wall. You fool! You murdered my son! He grabbed Kakashi by the hair and hoisted him up, making the copy-nin whimper. Kakashi continued whimpering. Minato-sensei, please, had I known he was your son IGGHH. Minato buried his fist in Kakashi's ribcage, snapping at least 3 of them. It should not have mattered whether you knew he was my son or not. You should have followed my wishes. He flung Kakashi face first into the wall. Minato turned towards Rin, and then towards Kakashi. Tell me, Kakashi, was Rin also in on the murder of my son? Kakashi tried to stand and looked at Minato. Why yes, but Minato quickly used Shunshin to move over towards Kakashi and backhanded him before he turned towards Rin's prone form. He walked towards her and grabbed her by her hair and yanked out a kunai, before turning towards Kakashi. This is the fate you will not enjoy. And rammed the kunai through her throat. Kakashi's eyes widened in horror as Minato tore the kunai out of Rin's throat and threw her to the ground, before turning towards Kakashi. You, my most treacherous student, shall have a fate far worse than death. No! Minato turned towards Narumi, who was thrashing even harder in Kushina's grip. You bastard, she was mine, to kill. She glared at Kakashi, and he will die by my hands, no others. Kushina held on to Narumi as tightly as she could. Narumi-chan, please calm down. The ones who killed your Aniki will be punished, so please calm down. Naruto sliced her knife across Kushina's hand, making her loosen her grip before she ran out of the room. Narumi! Minato ran towards the door and looked down the halls, to find Narumi was gone. He cast a glare towards Kakashi. You will suffer for this traitor. He barged out of the room as Kushina stared hatefully at Kakashi. Kakashi lowered his gaze, and found himself staring into Rin's lifeless eyes as her blood pooled across the floor. With Narumi. Narumi barged out of the hospital and ran towards the Hokage Tower. She ducked and weaved out of the crowds, who were running towards their homes as the air suddenly got colder, and the sky grew darker. Rain began to pelt the ground, and all the people walking through the streets as Narumi ran up the stairs towards the top of the Kage Tower. As she reached the top, she stumbled, scraping her hands and knees. Lightning struck through the sky as she stumbled to her feet, and walked towards the edge of the tower's ledge. Falling to her scraped knees, she looked over the village, her blue eyes taking in everything as she overlooked the village she had called home, the place where she was born. The people that murdered her Aniki. Sneering in disgust, she lowered her head and looked down, seeing her reflection in the water beneath her. Tears brimmed at her eyes as she noticed how much she looked like her Aniki except for whisker marks. She looked down at her dagger, and as her eyes filled with darkness, she gripped her dagger even tighter and yanked it up, pressing it against her cheek. Slash! She cut a long jagged scar from one side of her cheek to the other, slash, then another slash, and then one more. She then switched hands, and did the same thing on the other side of her face. By the end of it, she had 3 jagged scars on each cheek, much like her brother's whisker marks. Blood dripped down into the puddle beneath her, tinting her white hospital gown with red and making her reflection turn crimson. She looked up into the stormy sky as lightning arced across the sky, her eyes filled with sadness, grief, hate, and she looked down towards the bloody dagger in her hands. Ah! Without a second thought, she rammed the dagger straight through her palm, cutting through flesh and bone as she allowed tears to flow from her eyes, mixing with the blood coming from her cheeks. After several minutes, she looked up, darkened determination in her eyes. I swear on this blade and on my blood, that I will bring forth justice to all those who have harmed my Aniki. She slowly stood to her feet. Death is my calling, vengeance my creed. Her eyes turned pink as her pupil became a slit. I will wash away this village in a river of its own blood, and I will proclaim justice for the wrongdoings it has committed against me and my Aniki. She tore the dagger from her palm, as she shouted to the heavens, I will have my revenge. A crack of lightning struck the side of the Kage Tower as she shouted to the heavens. Silence reigned for a moment as she fell to her knees, the dark look still in her eyes. I am Adachi Narumi, scion of vengeance. Naruto stared up at Yamato no Orochi in confusion. A Genesis dragon, what is that? Yamato no Orochi sighed sadly. I wish I could tell you, but knowledge on the Genesis dragon is rare, very rare. The Genesis dragon is not like other Yuki, in that the numbers are large enough that they can be documented, or that they have a specific culture. He placed the book in Naruto's hand. That single page there is all the information we have on the Genesis dragon race, and even that is still debatable on whether it is true or not. Naruto looked at the page with curiosity. It was written in a language he could not understand, but from what he could tell there were some small diagrams. Sadly, he could not understand those either. Yamato no Orochi seemed to notice Naruto's difficulty. Don't worry, Naruto. In time you will learn to understand our language, then you will be able to read from the contents in this room. He took the book from Naruto and placed it back on the shelf. Naruto looked up at Yamato no Orochi. What do you mean? Yasui chuckled out. Isn't it obvious, Naruto? You are going to need training if you want to live in this village. I doubt you will last long otherwise. Naruto stared up at Yasui. Why you mean I am going to be trained? Yasui smirked. Yep, that's right kid, though it will take some time before you are strong enough to use any of your natural abilities. Until then, you will be learning some basic Yuki art starting with linguistic skills. I doubt you will be able to get through the first year of our school without learning how to read our language, or talk in it. Naruto's eyes widened, and a grin crept up his features. Alright. He began to jump around for joy. Thoughts of how he would soon learn to control his powers running through his mind, how he would be able to protect his Imuto better, how he... Naruto's eyes widened. He had been so shocked by everything that had occurred the last few days. He had made so many snap decisions that he had completely forgotten how it would be affecting those he cared about. He had left Narumi alone. Oh Kami-sama! What have I done? I left her all by herself in that hellhole without even thinking of the consequences. How could I be so stupid? I did exactly what they did to us. Oh my Kami, she probably thinks I am dead. I her whole world, and she thinks I am dead. Only Kami knows what she might do to herself. I have to remedy this situation now. Everyone in the room stared at Naruto as he went from being giddy, to freezing up and then breaking into a panic. Tamama walked forward. Naruto, are you alright? Naruto quickly snapped his head towards Yamato. Please, I need to send a message to Konoha. I need to tell my Imuto I am alright. Yamato no Orochi was taken aback by the sudden request and lowered his head. I am sorry, but I cannot allow that. Why the fuck not? Naruto shouted as he unconsciously released a large amount of Ki, shocking everyone in the cavern. My Imuto, who value me above all others, is alone, thinking that I am dead. I can't just leave it this way. I need to let her know I am safe. Yamato no Orochi shook his head. Damn, I was not prepared for such Ki. He sighed. I am sorry, Naruto, but as it is, we have already broken too many protocols in this period of war. Naruto's eyes widened. War, but there wasn't fights, or battles, or an enemy. Naruto, think who has our kind, the Yuki, been at war with since the beginning of our village? Yamato stepped forward. Think hard. Naruto looked down and a look of realization crossed his face before he looked up. The Hellspawn and corrupted? Yamato no Orochi nodded. Precisely, we have been at war with them for such a long time that they have learned to fight without needing to be seen or fighting themselves. We already broke many protocols by simply allowing you in this village during such a time, when any other time we would have killed any intruder. The only reason our guards saw fit to bring you to Tamamo-sama and not simply imprison or kill you was because of two reasons. One, was that it was Tamamo's shift to watch over prisoners, and two, because you are a child. Even then, you are extremely lucky. Naruto looked down, and shook his head. Please, I am not asking for much, I just want to send a message to my Imuto to let her know that I am alright. Is that too much to ask? Yamato snapped. Yes. Naruto's eyes quivered. But why? If we risk sending a single messenger, there runs the possibility of them being captured and vital information being leaked, and if they find out that you, the next Genesis Dragon, have a sister, they will use her against you to kill you, or make you surrender yourself to use you as breeding stock. We cannot allow our messengers to leave unless it is vital. He sighed sadly. I am sorry, Naruto, but we simply cannot allow you to send a message with how high the risks are. Naruto lowered his head and sighed. Fine. Yamato no Orochi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. I thank you for. Then I will leave for Konoha tomorrow. Everyone stared at Naruto. What? Naruto looked up at them. I am not going to leave my Imuto in a village all by herself thinking that I am dead, even if that village hates my very being. I will endure it for her. Naruto turned around and went to leave the room. I am sorry, Naruto, but we cannot allow you to leave. Naruto froze in his tracks and slowly turned his head. What did you do? Yamato no Orochi sighed. I said we cannot allow you to leave, not after becoming what you are. Naruto snapped his body around and shouted, why the fuck not? Yamato snapped his head up towards Naruto. Because Naruto, if you leave these walls, no doubt you will be attacked by Hellspawn or corrupted, then taken back to the hidden village of the damned to be used as breeding stock. We cannot allow the power of a Genesis Dragon to be held by such beasts, not with what they plan to do to this world. A never-ending inferno, where only the Hellspawn and corrupted will be capable of surviving. We can't allow them to gain a single advantage, especially not one such as you. Naruto lowered his head as Yamato walked past him. Yasui looked at Yamato. Come on, Yamato, can't you? Yamato walked completely past him, ignoring the former Rinseikage. Tamama looked sadly towards Naruto, and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto, I'm so sorry. Naruto simply tucked his hands into his pockets as he headed up the ramp to leave the cavern. Yamato sighed as he put everything away. I am sorry, Naruto, truly I am. And after he finished, he and the two Kitsune Yoko began to walk up the ramp after Naruto. Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed as he went through his daily routine, filing paperwork, and examining mission reports. Right now, he was examining a file he wished he would not live to see. Naruto Uzumaki's death certificate. He sighed and began to apply the finishing information before he tucked it away. When he finally finished, he sighed as he looked at the date of birth and the date of death. October 10th he died, the same day he lived. He sighed sadly and placed it in with Naruto's files, which consisted of a large folder 2 inches thick, filled with his birth certificate, his academy notes, his injury files, and now, his death certificate. He let his head fall into his hands. What am I going to tell Minato and Kushina? He was about to put the file away. How about how you left my son to die? Hiruzen shot his head up as he heard a familiar voice just before he was grabbed by his throat and lifted off of the ground by a very pissed-off Minato. Hiruzen gasped out, "And Minato, why you're back?" Minato snorted, "Of course I'm back, you senile old fool. And guess what I find the moment I get back?" He threw Hiruzen across the room, right into the bookcase, a crack resounding throughout the room. "I find out that my son, the one I remember you telling me you will protect with the best of your abilities, is dead. Murdered by my own students. I find out that you told the populace that my son was a Jinchuriki, but not that he was my son. And don't even get me started on my daughter's condition." He walked towards Hiruzen. "Why?" Hiruzen looked up at Minato. "I don't OPH. He was swiftly kicked in the stomach by Minato. Minato shouted, "Why did you leave my children like that, Sarutobi, when you promised me that you would protect them?" Hiruzen coughed, and Minato, as soon as I told the council that Naruto contained the Kyuubi, they were screaming for his death. If I told them his heritage, it might have leaked to IWA, and if they knew you were in such weak condition they would have sent assassins to kill you." Minato leaned down. "So that's your excuse for not protecting my children, bullshit." He punched Hiruzen straight in the jaw, no doubt breaking it. "You failed to protect my children, Hiruzen. You didn't even bother setting them up with any caretakers. You just threw them in the orphanage to die." Hiruzen tried to protest, but ended up whimpering in pain as he tried to speak. Minato continued, "My children suffered at the hands of my own village, and all because you never coughed up the nerve to protect them, or to tell the populace." He crossed his arms. "Yes, IWA hated my guts and no doubt would have tried sending assassins after my child, or me, but that could easily be solved with some ABU guards, or maybe some clan guards like you always give to your children when they are out on missions, even though they are seasoned jonin." He snorted, "And the only way IWA could send assassins after me would be if you told them where I was." Hiruzen lowered his head in shame. Minato did not stop, and on top of that, I also find out that neither Jiraiya or Tsunade have even once checked up on my children, even though Minato stopped as he noticed Naruto's folder out of the corner of his eye, and quickly walked over to it. Hiruzen's eyes widened as he tried to stand up and stop Minato, but he fell back as he squealed in pain. Minato grabbed the folder and flipped to the first page and began to read. His eyes widened in horror. "Okami," he quickly flipped to the next page and read it again, and again his grip on the folder began to tighten as he clenched his teeth, his eyes darkening as a murderous look passed over his face. Hiruzen shivered as he felt the aura in the room become colder as a feeling of raw fury passed over him. "And Minato, please understand the..." "You bastard!" Minato charged at Hiruzen and smashed his fist into Hiruzen's already broken jaw, shattering the bones so much that only Tsunade would be able to heal them. "You fucking moronic bastard! My son was beaten, tortured, starved, and many other things, and not once did you even attempt, or think of getting him a proper caretaker, never once tried to stop the attacks?" Hiruzen could not answer, as his jaw would not move, and he was on the ground whimpering pathetically. Minato grabbed Hiruzen by what little remained of his hair. "Look at me when I am talking to you, Hiruzen." He backhanded Hiruzen and then dragged him up again. "My son was tortured, beaten, and abused by the villagers, and your shinobi and my daughter was forced to watch. And not once does it show in this folder," he held up the folder to Hiruzen's face, "that you did anything to stop these attacks, or punish those who committed them." He threw Hiruzen to the floor and raised his foot above the Sandame's throat. Crash! Hiruzen! Minato turned his head towards the door to see his wife walk in, and she was pissed. The first thing she saw was Minato with his foot above Hiruzen's throat, no doubt ready to kill him. Kushina simply watched, waiting for Minato to bring his foot down on the bastard who allowed their children to suffer. Minato looked at Kushina, then back at Hiruzen, and a cruel, heartless look passed over his face as he placed his foot on the ground. "Kushina, do you remember that genjutsu you learned a couple years back?" Kushina raised an eyebrow. "The one I learned from that torture specialist, yeah, why?" Minato looked at the folder in his hands. "I believe we should let Hiruzen feel what our son felt before he was murdered." He walked over to her and handed her the folder, before he grabbed Hiruzen by the scruff of his neck and dragged him out of the office. Kushina looked curiously down towards the folder, and opened it up. Her eyes widened as she covered her mouth. "Oh, Kami-sama," she closed the folder quickly and shook her head. "It can't be, it just can't be." My baby suffered like this before his death? She gritted her teeth as she cast a glare in the direction Minato had dragged Sarutobi, and opened the folder as she began to read through the files. Her tears stained the pages with every word she read. With Minato. The rain outside poured down heavily as Minato kicked open the doors to the Hokage Tower and walked outside, dragging Hiruzen with him. Minato held a dark look about him as he dragged the Sandaime through the empty streets as thunder and lightning crashed across the sky. Hiruzen whimpered in pain as he felt his hair being yanked and his shattered jaw scratch against itself. As Minato passed by, those who were watching out their windows for the storm to end gasped in shock as they saw the Yandaime, and were riddled with confusion as they saw him dragging the Sandaime through the muddy streets. Minato looked left and right, and clenched his fists tighter as he saw the village knowing his children had suffered because of it. Hiruzen yelped in pain as he felt Minato's fist tighten around his hair. After what seemed like 20 minutes, Minato finally stopped dragging Hiruzen as he looked up to his location. The front gates of the Sarutobi clan complex. Minato quickly kicked the gates open, and walked inside, dragging Hiruzen roughly through the mud. Once he was 20 feet away from the entrance to the compound, he pulled Hiruzen up and forced him to look at him, then threw him straight into the ground, hitting his broken jaw. Ag! Hiruzen screamed out as his broken jaw cut through the flesh of his mouth as blood began to seep from his mouth. Minato sneered in disgust, and then turned towards the household of the Sarutobi clan as he heard a large amount of footsteps coming from inside the complex. The complex doors slammed open as a number of Sarutobi clan members ran outside, most of them still in their sleeping clothes. They froze in shock at what they saw. The Yandaime was standing in the middle of their property, with their clan head screaming in pain on the ground next to him. One Sarutobi spoke up, "Why Yandaime-sama, what how? What happened to Sandaime-sama? Did an enemy attack him? Did you save him?" Another shouted out. In a few moments the crowd of Sarutobis began to shout amongst themselves. Minato sneered and shouted, "Silence!" He released a blast of ki, quieting the group of Sarutobi clan members. Once they had completely quieted down, Minato took a deep breath. "Now that I have your attention, I will explain what is really going on here." The Sarutobi clan members were staring at the Yandaime awaiting his explanation. Minato looked them over. "I was not dead, if that is what all of you are thinking. I was alive, but due to the sealing of the Kyuubi he noticed a few hateful glances in the clan members. I was rendered ill, and likely would have died in a few days' time. I left the village with my wife to try and find a way to survive what I was going through, and all I asked from Hiruzen here was that he protect my children." Hiruzen's oldest son, Takamaru Sarutobi, stepped forward. He looked like a carbon copy of Hiruzen in his younger years, but had a light graying to his hair. "What do you mean you did not have children? Otherwise we would ha." Takamaru was quickly silenced by another burst of ki. Minato snarled, "The reason none of you knew of this is because Hiruzen here is so fit to keep my children's existence a secret, and left them to die." Takamaru's wife stepped forward. She was a dark-haired woman who looked rather average. What do you mean? Hiruzen-sama would never leave a child to die." Minato was about to retort when Kushina suddenly appeared in a shunshing, tears staining her face, along with a look or rage and despair on her face. Minato placed a hand on her shoulder. "Kushina, are you alright?" Kushina turned her head towards Minato. "I just looked through a folder displaying every injury, every torture, and every last bit of abuse my Sochi faced. How do you think I feel?" The Sarutobi family's eyes widened in shock. How bad could their son have had it? Takamaru spoke up. "Your son was abused?" He snarled, "Tell us who abused your child, and we will see to it that they are punished." The Sarutobi family shouted their agreement as Kushina turned towards them. "Oh, I think you already know who abused my child, Takamaru, especially since you were the one who led many of the mobs that chased him." Kushina's statement hit Takamaru like a ton of bricks and his face contorted into a sneer. "The Kyuubi brat." He spat out in disgust. That thing? I refuse to believe that abomination is your child. Even if it was, it is long since past being your offspring. The Kyuubi has taken over his form. I was doing Konoha a service by trying to kill it." Minato sneered in disgust, then snapped his head towards Hiruzen. "So you even allow your son to go unpunished after his abuse towards my son?" He kicked Hiruzen in the side. Takamaru pulled a kunai out. "Get away from my father." He launched himself at Minato, his kunai raised as the other members of the Sarutobi clan cried out for him to stop. Minato did not so much as bat an eyelash as he pulled out his Hiraishin kunai and swung Squlch and thrust it right into Takamaru's sternum. "Takamaru!" His wife cried out as she ran down the stairs only to be knocked down by Kushina, who had appeared before her in a shunshin. Minato ripped his kunai out of Takamaru's sternum and let him fall to the ground dead, a pool of blood collecting underneath his body. Takamaru's wife shouted, "You monster! How could you do this?" Kushina backhanded her, making her fly towards the stairs in front of the compound. Hiruzen's younger brother stepped forward. You killed the heir to the Sarutobi clan. Why? The other Sarutobis began to shout out. Why did you kill the clan heir? How dare you kill Takamaru-sama? You murderer! Minato had enough. Quiet. You all know why I killed him. Didn't all of you hear how he slandered my child's name, how he openly admitted to being the leader of attacks on my child's life? He sneered in disgust towards them. That demon deserved to die. Minato and Kushina turned their attention towards Takamaru's wife, who was sneering towards them. Because of that demon, Biwako-sama is dead. That demon deserves to suffer for what it has taken from us. Minato remained quiet, then turned his attention towards the rest of the gathered Sarutobi clan members. Is that how you all feel towards my child? He awaited their answer. Their silence was all he needed. He sneered in disgust. The Sarutobi clan, the one known for being the most prominent believers in the will of fire, believes an innocent child, whose only evil was to be used as the container for the Kyuubi no Yoko, deserves to die. He snarled. You disgust me. Hiruzen's younger brother, Yaname-sama, you must understand that as long as Ka-chan Tusan. Everyone stopped and turned around as a boy no older than 2 or 3 years walked out of the house, wiping at his eyes. Why is it so loud? He removed his hands from his eyes and they widened in shock and horror at the sight before him. His Aji-san was on the ground, whimpering in pain, his father lying in a pool of blood, and his mother laying on the ground with 2 strangers standing above them, one holding a bloody kunai right next to his father, and the other standing near his mother. He did the first thing any 2-year-old would do in such a situation. Ah, thump! He screamed in terror and fainted right there on the spot. Takamaru's wife's eyes widened and shouted, Konohamaru! She tried to stand up and run over to her son, only to get smacked in the back of the head with the blunt end of a kunai by Kushina. Minato sneered and grabbed Hiruzen by his hair, and yanked him up until he was on his knees, eliciting a yelp of pain from the old Hokage. Minato looked towards Kushina. Kushina looked towards Minato, who nodded his head and looked at Hiruzen, and she nodded her head in turn. She sent one more kick into the side of Takamaru's wife and walked over towards Minato, and stood behind Hiruzen. She leaned her head down. I read through my son's files, Hiruzen. Hiruzen froze, and immediately his heart was filled with terror. Kushina pressed her index fingers to Hiruzen's temples, and whispered into his ear, Now I will make you suffer as my son suffered. She glanced up towards the gathered Sarutobi, and just like my daughter was forced to watch your clan, shall watch. Hiruzen swallowed hard and whimpered out, I won't scream. Kushina looked at him impassively, and her eyes were filled with hatred as she snarled out, Ninpo, Bachigataru. Hiruzen had to bite his lips as he was suddenly flooded with pain, the feeling of his arms being broken and stabbed in place coursing through him. After 10 seconds of this torture he could no longer hold it. Aghai oh kami, please mercy. He screamed in agony after only 10 seconds of torture. The Sarutobi clan tried to move forward to stop Kushina but stopped when a large number of kunai were thrown directly in front of them. All of them were Minato's Hiraishin kunai. They all looked up towards Minato, who shook his head as he put his hand into a hand sign and charged a minuscule amount of chakra, as if daring them to move. Kushina kept up with her genjutsu, even as Hiruzen's screams grew louder in volume. She pressed her fingers harder against his temples, making him feel more of the pain that Naruto felt. Finally, after 10 minutes, Hiruzen stopped screaming, but his eyes had a glazed-over look, and his face was contorted with pain. Kushina sneered and kicked him in the back, and then turned her attention towards the Sarutobi family. Now for the rest of you. She reached for her weapon and was about to step forward. Let's go, Kushina. Kushina turned her attention towards Minato, who was walking towards her. Kushina hissed out, What, you want me to let them go after practically admitting to allowing our children to suffer? She stopped when Minato put his hand on her shoulder and whispered in her ear. She nodded her head. All right. She grabbed Hiruzen by his hair and began to drag him out. Hiruzen's brother shouted, The council will hear of this. He was suddenly smashed into the ground by a well-placed burst of Ki. Minato slowly turned his head and ground out, Let me be absolutely clear with you. The council cannot do shit. Konoha is not a democracy. Konoha is not a republic. Konoha is a dictatorship. He snapped around and shouted, And as the dictator of Konoha, I say that the council can't do shit about me punishing a traitor, or making an example of him in front of his equally traitorous clan. The clan grew confused. Traitors, we have been loyal to this village since its founding. Surely you jest. You all believed an innocent child deserved death because he was a Jinchuriki. You housed a criminal who tried to murder said child. As far as I am concerned, you are traitors in that regard. He turned around, dragging Hiruzen out of the compound by his hair. Minato turned his head towards Kushina. You still have those credentials to get you into ANBU headquarters. Kushina nodded her head. Yes, why? Minato turned towards the Hokage tower. Find out where Tsunade and Jiraiya are. It's about time those two stopped shirking their duties, and explain why they have been shirking them in the first place. Kushina nodded her head, and quickly used Shunshin to get to the ANBU headquarters. Meanwhile, Minato kept walking towards the Kage tower with the battered Sarutobi dragging behind him. Hidden Village of the Ancients. Naruto walked through the forest just outside the Rinseikage Tower. Looking at the ground as he traversed the forest, his disappointment clearly shone on his face. His hands were tucked into his pockets as his head was kept down. He let out a sad sigh as he kept walking through. He just couldn't understand it. Why couldn't he just send a letter to make sure his beloved Imuto was safe, to let her know he was alright? He knew that they were at war, that was understandable, but couldn't they just send someone, or something the enemy could not, or would not even bother to stop? He finally stopped in front of a large tree and swung his fist straight at the trunk. He pulled his fist back and winced in pain as he looked at his knuckles, which had been cut up when his fist connected with the rough bark. The knuckles were bleeding pretty badly. He was about to wrap it up when he noticed the skin start to mend itself back together. He watched in fascination as the skin grew back over his exposed flesh, and the wound completely healed. Flexing his fingers, he examined his hand. It felt good as new. Sighing, he stuffed his hand in his pocket and went to walk a different route when he caught a shimmer of movement in the corner of his eye. He swiftly turned the direction of the shimmer to see what it was. It looks like a silver-like object was moving through the air not too far from where he was. He shook his head, "I don't have time for this," and was about to move on. Boom! When he suddenly stumbled as a large explosion came from the direction of the shimmer, sending a mini quake through the ground. He quickly turned his head to see a plume of smoke in the same spot. He saw the shimmer of silver. Without thinking, he quickly ran to where the smoke was coming from, rushing through the forest as quickly as he could until he crashed the bushes and saw what had happened. There was a small crater, about 10 by 10 feet wide, spiderweb cracks running through the ground, and from the crater, a plume of smoke was surrounding something. Naruto tried to move in closer as the smoke began to clear. After a few moments, he managed to notice a humanoid figure standing in the middle of crater, holding something in front of them, which vaguely resembled a sword. He squinted his eyes to get a better look, and a light breeze swept through the area, blowing away the remaining smoke. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Standing in the middle of the crater was a beautiful young girl. She had a slender figure with long purple hair that was tied with a white ribbon. She wore a purple hakama, and a white haori with a sash-like belt, and wooden sandals. She was holding a traditional katana in front of her which had a light glow to it, and by the looks of it, she was rather tired. Naruto could not help but stare at the young girl. She was one of the most beautiful girls he has ever seen in his life. A light tint of pink came to his cheeks as he moved in closer and accidentally snapped a twig. The girl's ears twitched slightly and she turned her head to Naruto's direction, who was just standing there watching. She gave him a soft smile and fell to the ground unconscious. Holy crap! Naruto quickly ran over and slid into the small crater and looked her over. "Miss, are you alright?" He placed a finger to her neck and found a pulse. Phew, she is still alive. He sat back on his haunches and looked her over. After checking over to see how she was, a sigh escaped his lips. Phew, he wiped his hand across his brow. From what he could tell, she was only suffering something akin to chakra exhaustion. He sighed. Now what? He could not just leave her there, but he had no idea where she lived and if he waited here with her. He stopped his inner rambling when he saw what appeared to be a piece of paper sticking out of her hakama pocket. He quickly grabbed the piece of paper and opened it. It was a crest of some kind, a rather unique one too. It had the profile view of a bird spreading its wings out, and a yin-yang symbol just underneath it. It had 2 tomo on each side of the yin-yang symbol. He pocketed the symbol, thinking if he asked around, he might be able to find out where this girl lived. He quickly hoisted her up, and carried her on his back as he headed out of the forest towards the village. Elsewhere, a large door, covered in ornate runes and designs, was opened, and Yasui walked out of the doorway, and turned around as Yamato no Orochi walked out, rubbing his temples. "Alright Yasui, I get it. Send Naruto to my office as soon as you see him. I will deliver the news myself." Yasui smiled. "Of course, Sandaime-sama." Yamato no Orochi sighed. "Please don't call me that. Hearing that from you of all people makes me feel older than I already am." Yasui grinned and threw his arm over Yamato no Orochi's shoulder. "Ah, come on Yamachan, don't be like that. Enjoy being called someone of a higher authority for a while." Yamato ground his teeth. "Don't call me Yamachan, damn it." He ground underneath his breath. Yasui chuckled. "Oh come on, I have called you that since you were this tall." He placed his hand just above his knees, then clapped his hands together. "Well, I had better go find that little blonde soon." He practically skipped down the hallway as Yamato no Orochi went into his office down the hallway with Naruto. As soon as Naruto asked if someone knew of the crest, he was directed to a large hill which had a small house sitting atop it, which looked to be of human design. He quickly went up to the house, carrying the young girl on his back as he trudged up the long stone pathway. After a great many steps, he finally came to the front door of the place, panting madly. Damn long walk. He walked up the steps to the door, and knocked on it a few times, then stepped back. After he waited a few moments, the door was opened, and a middle-aged man stepped out. He had curly blonde hair that hid part of his face, and he wore a turtleneck sweater and sweatpants covered by a white cloak. He looked down towards Naruto and the girl on his back. Naruto gulped as the silence became rather strained. Hello, and my name Naruto suddenly froze as he noticed the man's aura darken and a horrifying visage appeared behind the man. Naruto was so terrified that he barely made out the Oni-like face as the man spoke. What do you think you are doing with my niece, boy? He reached behind the door and pulled out a rather sharp katana and pointed it at Naruto's forehead. Speak now, or I shall slice your skull open like a watermelon, and after I have smoothed and polished your severed skull, I shall use it as a drinking cup for my fine wines as I watch the setting sun while nibbling on a freshly cooked stick of dango. Naruto's eyes widened as he shouted out, Please don't kill me. He quickly whipped out the paper with the crest on it. The man seemed to sweat drop at this. Okay, could you say that again, slower this time? Naruto took a deep breath and said, I was walking through the forest when I found her training and she collapsed from exhaustion, and I brought her here after I showed this paper to people who directed me to this place. Please don't kill me. The man looked at Naruto and smiled. Alright, then he placed the sword behind the door and opened it a bit wider. Come inside, we have some dango on the side. He said as if he had not just threatened to use his skull as a wine glass as he walked into the house, humming a tune. Naruto just stared at the man's back and whimpered to himself, I am scared, and slowly walked inside with the girl on his back. 10 minutes later. Naruto and the man were sitting in front of each other, with the young girl laying on the sofa. The two males were each holding a glass of tea, though Naruto was holding it with both hands as his hands shook madly. The man smiled as he took another sip of his tea. Green jasmine, a fine drink to have at such an hour. He placed his teacup down and smiled at Naruto. Now that we have had our tea, perhaps we should introduce ourselves. My name is Takahito Asama, and you are? Naruto gulped as he stuttered, and Naruto. Takahito raised an eyebrow. No surname? Naruto quickly averted his gaze. None that I wish to bear on my identity. Takahito nodded. I see family issues, I am assuming. Well then, I shall not press any further then. He picked up his teacup. By the way, I must thank you for bringing my dear niece home. She always overexerts herself. Quite a fine young lady, she is a beautiful rose, with a sharp thorn. He took a sip from his teacup. GRRN Takahito and Naruto turned towards the girl whom was laying on the couch, whom was now starting to stir. She slowly sat up and grabbed her head. She shook her head, letting her hair fly around a bit before she looked up and saw Takahito staring at her. The young girl lowered her head and sighed. No, I overdid it again, didn't I? Takahito smiled. Yes, you did. He walked over to her and got on his knees, and placed a hand on her head. Tried to be more careful next time. If this young boy here had not found you, you likely would have slept there for quite a while until you finally woke up. The girl looked behind Takahito and saw Naruto. She smiled softly. I saw you there, you were peeping on me while I trained, she said in a sing-song voice as her aura darkened for a moment. Naruto quickly held up his arms defensively. No, I was walking through the forest when I saw a plume of smoke and went to investigate, and I found you. The girl's aura softened. Oh, that's good. She held her hand out. My name is Mia Asama, I am pleased to meet you. Her aura darkened a moment. What is your name, sir? Naruto shivered and quickly shook her hand. Naruto, pleased to meet you. Mia smiled. Good, now was that so hard? Takahito chuckled softly, then looked towards the door as a soft knocking sound coming from the door. I wonder who that could be. He got up and walked over to the door and opened it. Hello, how can I? He stopped as he suddenly saw who was in front of him. Yasui Tensai the Kyubi no Yoko and Naidame Rinsaikage. Yasui smiled. Hello, I was walking around town and I was wondering if by any chance why are you staring at me like that? Takahito shook his head. Sorry, Naidame-sama. Yasui held up his hand. Just Yasui. What is your name? He crossed his arms. Takahito stuttered out. My name is TT Takahito Asama. Yasui smiled. That is good. So, back to my question. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a picture. By any chance have you seen this boy? He pulled out a picture of Naruto. Takahito smiled. Why yes, I have. He is right inside. He stepped aside, beckoning Hai to come in. Come in, Yasui, make yourself at home. Yasui smiled and walked inside. Thank you, Takahito. He walked inside, humming a light tune as he entered the living room to find an odd sight. A young purple-haired girl was humming quietly next to Naruto with a sweet smile on her face while Naruto was quivering as he held a teacup in hand. Mia smiled and turned to look at Naruto. So, how long have you been in the village? Naruto gulped loudly. Ayano akupielides. Mia smiled wider. Really, maybe tomorrow I can show you around town. It would be nice to have someone to hang around with. Naruto opened his mouth to try and decline. I think that is a wonderful idea. Naruto and Mia looked up to see Yasui grinning down towards them. I think it would do young Naruto some good to have someone his own age to hang out with. Wouldn't you agree, Takahito? Takahito smiled. I agree, plus Mia needs a friend, and who better than the one who helped her out? Yasui smiled. I agree wholeheartedly, he snapped his fingers. Oh, I almost forgot. Naruto, Yamato no Orochi wishes to see you. Naruto immediately scowled as he looked at Yasui. Well, I do not want to see him. Yasui sighed and ran his fingers through his hair. Look, Naruto, I know you are upset with him. But Yamato no Orochi had his reasons for his decision, and I would really appreciate it if you spoke with him. Naruto looked at Yasui and sighed. Fine, he set down his teacup and walked up to Yasui. But don't be surprised if I storm out of that damn tower. He walked past Yasui and towards the door to the Rinsaikage Tower. Later, Naruto and Yasui walked through the Rinsaikage Tower, until they ended up in front of Yamato no Orochi's office. It had a design of an 8-headed serpent wrapping its long tail around a blade. Each serpent head had an orb in its mouth. Yasui sighed and knocked on the door. Yamachan, we're here. Yasui suddenly grabbed Naruto and pulled him off to the side. The sound of stamping feet was heard. Slam! The doors slammed open as a very irate Yamato no Orochi walked out. For the last time, stop calling me that. He panted loudly and then looked around. He saw Yasui grinning chilly off to the side with Naruto standing right next to him. He sighed and took a deep breath. Ah, Naruto, so glad you could come. Naruto snorted, that makes one of us, so what did you want? Yamato no Orochi sighed, please, come into my office, Naruto. He walked into his office as Naruto followed behind him. As Naruto entered, he found himself enamored by the sight. The walls were covered in serpent-like designs. It looked as if hundreds of thousands of snakes were carved into the walls, the coils circling the entirety of the room. There were also various statues of people with similar physical traits to Yamato no Orochi, but almost all of them were female. In front of the desk, there were 5 snake heads that were connected to serpents which came from the ceiling, down the walls, and right in front of Yamato no Orochi's desk. Naruto watched as Yamato no Orochi sat behind his desk, which also had serpentine designs in it. His chair was also very much like a serpent. It was a serpent. Yamato no Orochi sat in a stone chair that sat in the mouth of a serpent's skull and neck bones, using 2 of the ribs as armrests. Yamato no Orochi waved his hand. Please, have a seat. The serpent head directly in front of Yamato no Orochi's desk's eyes snapped open, and the body it was connected to began to slither downwards as the snake head rose upwards, its mouth opening in a 90-degree angle, revealing a cushion on the lower and upper jaws. Naruto gulped, and walked over to the seat and poked it, before he slowly sat on the edge of the snake's jaw, just in case. Yamato no Orochi took a deep breath. Naruto, Yasui spoke to me earlier today after I told you that you would not be allowed to leave the village, or send a message to Yoramuto. Naruto glared at Yamato. Yeah? Yamato no Orochi sighed. After much deliberation between Yasui and I have decided to allow you to send messages to Yoramuto. Naruto's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. What? He jumped off the seat and ran behind the desk. Are you joking me? Please tell me you are not joking me. Or so help me Kami. Yamato no Orochi grabbed him by the scruff of his shirt and lifted him up. Will you please let me finish? I have some criteria for me to allow this. Naruto nodded his head, though he was shaking madly in anticipation. Yamato no Orochi leaned over his desk and placed Naruto firmly onto the chair, and sighed. Now, while I am allowing you to send messages to Yoramuto, I am only allowing 1 message every 6 months. So 2 messages a year. I cannot spare any more than that. And if it becomes apparent that sending the messages are too dangerous, then the messaging will be stopped immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Do you understand? Naruto quickly nodded his head. Why, yeah, I understand. Yamato no Orochi smiled. Good. Now he reached into his pocket and pulled out a pocket watch. You have about 20 minutes to prepare a message to be sent to Yoramuto, so I suggest you start writing. He pulled out a piece of paper and a pen with a snake design on it. Naruto quickly jumped on the desk and quickly started writing down his message. He was writing so fast, Yamato no Orochi's eyes widened slightly. Damn, kid's got motivation, that's for Sue. Finished. Naruto held the paper in front of his Yamato no Orochi's face. Yamato no Orochi stared open-mouthed. What? But how? He slapped himself in the face. On second thought, I do not really care. He took the paper. Nurana. A shadowy figure appeared behind him. Please take this to Kanohigaku no Sato, to one Narumi please. The figure stepped out of the shadows, revealing a woman with snake-like eyes and long black hair. She had soft features and a slim form. She reached out, revealing her hands had slight webs in between her fingers. Yes, Rinsaikage-sama. She turned to leave only for Yamato no Orochi to grab her wrist. Be safe, my child. He looked up at her worriedly. The woman smiled softly. Don't worry, father, I will be fine. She melded back with the shadows and vanished from the room to deliver her message. 2 weeks later. Nurana panted in exhaustion as she walked through the forest just outside the walls of Konohagakure. In the last 2 weeks, she had more trouble than she had ever experienced before. She had to get past a large platoon of hellspawn and corrupted that were stationed just on the border of their lands. She had to go through unfamiliar forests, and she had heard so many different directions to get to Konoha that she almost got lost. Finally, she found a remotely reliable source in a small gambling town, and had quickly headed to the village. She sighed deeply and looked at the village wall. She then looked at the wall, and noticed a shadow underneath it. Smiling, she ran over to the shadow and dived in, vanishing as quickly as she had come. Suddenly, a shadow shimmered in an old rundown apartment complex, and Narumi squirmed out of the shadow. She took a deep breath. Okay then, now I just have to find out where Narumi lives. She walked out of the building, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. After a while, Narumi ended up in front of a small apartment complex where she heard Narumi lived. Apparently she was the talk of the town now. She was not sure why. Deciding not to look a gift horse in the mouth, she quickly walked inside the main lobby to deliver the message. She walked up to the receptionist. Excuse me, by any chance could you tell me where I can deliver this message to Naru? Over there, to your left. The receptionist pointed to the other side of the room, not even bothering to look up from her work. Narumi turned her head and her eyes widened in shock. There was a mailbox filled with letters to Narumi. Narumi walked over and looked at the message in her hand before stuffing it in the mailbox. Okay, mission accomplished. She walked out of the lobby, not noticing the pitying glance on the receptionist's face. I sure hope that message isn't important. As the thought came to mind, a figure walked out of the stairwell. The figure was feminine, though one would have to look closely to discern it, and she looked to be in terrible condition. She was walking around barefoot. Her feet were calloused and dirty, and her toenails were long and cracked. Her legs looked to be slightly malnourished, but her muscles looked rather worked and strong. She wore a pair of tattered civilian pants that had blood stains on them. She also wore a civilian shirt that was ripped and torn in places. The only thing covering her decency were the bloody bandages underneath her shirt. Her long blondish hair was tangled, messy, and filled with dirt, twigs, and other such debris, and it was covering most of her face. Her visible skin was covered in dirt, and looked to be slightly bruised in places. The figure stepped towards the mailbox, her nails scratching against the floor every so often. She stopped right in front of the mailbox. She moved her arm and reached out, revealing an arm covered in bloody bandages, and calloused fingers. Her nails were slightly long, and looked like they had been sharpened with a nails file, if the scratch marks on her fingertips were anything to go by. She pulled the mail out, and used her other hand to brush the hair out of her face. Her face was beautiful and at the same time horrifying. She had 6 deep whisker-like marks on her face, 3 on each cheek, which looked like they had been carved there. Her face was stained with what looked like old tear marks, and she had a dead look in her cerulean blue eyes. Sneering slightly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a box of matches. She quickly pulled out a single match and flicked it against the side of the box. Without even bothering to look at the mail, she set the corners on fire, then dropped it in the metal trash bin. She turned away and headed back up the stairs. The receptionist looked up sadly towards the girl and looked at the nameplate on the mailbox. With all the mail that was in it, it only revealed the first name, but now that it was burning in the bin, she could read the full nameplate. Adachi Narumi. What if Naruto has found clan ancestor's tomb? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.